Today we're going to figure out which two-stage fire type is the best for a solo playthrough of Pokemon Yellow. To do that though, we're going to have to go back in time. So let's head back to March 2022 when this story started. We had just wrapped up production on Hitmonchan vs Hitmonlee, my April Fool's special, and I was really hoping to get into another Versus video that I could premiere later on in April. My intent at that point was to do one of these Versus videos every month for the rest of the year. However, if you examine the videos on my channel, you'll know that that's not exactly how things played out, but that was my intention at the time. I had been getting a lot of requests for Arcanine vs Ninetales, and I figured that it would be the perfect follow-up. After all, Hitmonlee vs Hitmonchan was a very one-sided match, and I thought that this one would be a much more balanced matchup. Plus, Arcanine and Ninetales are version exclusives, Arcanine being available in red version and Ninetales being available in blue version. So I did some thinking about these Pokemon, and I had to make a crucial decision at the start of the process. Was I going to start the playthroughs with Growlithe and Vulpix and evolve throughout the playthrough, allowing them to learn more moves by level up? Or would I simply start with the final stage with a much more constrained move pool? If you don't know, in Generation 1, Pokemon that evolve using stones basically learn no new moves through level up once they're at their final stage. This means that Pokemon like Arcanine and Ninetales won't have access to powerful moves like Flamethrower if they start fully evolved. Now at the time, I was trying to take my channel in a different direction, which was I was trying to start the playthroughs with first stage Pokemon and evolve throughout the playthrough. You can see this in my video like Fearow vs Pidgeot. And so I decided to do Arcanine vs Ninetales in that way, giving them access to more powerful moves through level up. So I prepared overlays, and I actually streamed these playthroughs on Twitch. As I get started with them, let's quickly compare stats between these Pokemon. Arcanine has 90 HP, 110 attack, 80 defense, 80 special, and 95 speed, whereas Ninetales has 73 HP, 76 attack, 75 defense, 100 special, and 100 speed. So Arcanine is the slower physical attacker, whereas Ninetales is the faster special attacker. They're both mono fire types, so they share 3 single weaknesses to ground, rock, and water types. Because I'm starting with their first stages, I should go through their level up learn set. For Growlithe, it starts with Bite and Roar. By the way, Roar does nothing in trainer battles in Generation 1. Then through level up, it gets Ember, Leer, Takedown, Agility, and Flamethrower. However, this final powerful fire type move is only obtained at level 50. Vulpix, on the other hand, starts with a more powerful initial set. It gets Ember and Tail Whip. Then through level up, it gets Quick Attack, Roar, Confuse Ray, Flamethrower, and Fire Spin. So comparing these two level up learn sets, I think it's clear that Vulpix has an advantage. It's a special attacker which starts with the same type attack bonus special move, and then it gets Flamethrower at level 35. The only advantage that Growlithe really has is the fact that it gets access to Agility, which can be used to trigger the badge boost. I'll unpack what that really means for any new viewers later on, but just know that this move is going to be much more useful than just boosting my speed. Through TMs and HMs, they have access to almost identical move pools. Body Slam, Takedown, Double Edge, Dig, Mimic, Reflect, Fire Blast, Swift, and Rest. The only difference between them is that the Arcanine line can learn Dragon Rage. However, this TM is obtainable through the Game Corner, so I won't be using it today. So we've almost gone through everything about these Pokemon, but the last thing is very strange, and I have to mention this just because these two are version exclusives. Like, you'd think that they'd be almost identical, and up until this point we've seen that they are. However, Vulpix has a medium fast growth rate, and Growlithe has a slow growth rate. Maybe it's because Arcanine is the legendary Pokemon, but yeah, slow growth rate Pokemon tend to struggle. So if I had to make a prediction now, I would definitely say that Ninetales has an advantage here. But I've been wrong in the past, and that's why I make these videos to test these situations out. So let's jump into the playthroughs and see how these two can do. One thing I want to mention at the start of the game is just how good Oak is with his Pokeballs. Like, come on, this guy catches everything. And if you want your balls to catch everything, well, that's where Manscaped has you covered. With their Performance Package 4.0 that includes their Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, you can stop poking your balls and make them great. This trimmer has advanced skin-safe technology with a cutting-edge ceramic blade that helps reduce grooming accidents like nicks. It's got a light on it so you can see in the dark, and it's also waterproof. The package also includes the Weed Whacker, which is a nose and ear hair trimmer, and that's not all because it also comes with liquid formulations. I also really want to take a moment and mention the boxers that came with the performance package. They are so unbelievably soft and comfortable. I want to switch my entire wardrobe over to these. When I was recently sick, my fiance washed them for me every day so that I could always wear them. That is true love. So get 20% off and free shipping with the code ScottsThoughts at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com using the code ScottsThoughts. Be thankful this holiday season for the best gift of all from Manscaped. Your balls will thank you. So now that you've got yourself some great balls, or that special person in your life has been able to master their balls, now let's get back to the playthrough. So with Growlithe, it starts with Bite, which is actually a 60 base power normal type move, which is pretty good for this thing because it's primarily a physical attacker. Unfortunately for it though, the first gym leader in Kanto is Brock, and he's a rock type specialist, so this move is not going to be particularly good against him. As a result, I'm going to spend some time training up just south of Viridian City to level up to level 9. Then I'm going to face the rival on Route 22 to level Growlithe up as much as possible for Brock. After all, we have to remember this thing is a slow growth rate Pokemon, so it is going to take some time to level up. I estimate that I'll need to face Brock around level 13 or 15, so a little bit of extra experience is going to help. The rival leads with Spearow, and it immediately goes for Growl, lowering my attack stat. That's really frustrating. As a result, Bite only does a quarter, and then on the next turn I outspeed, which means I'm tied with the Spearow. Okay, so that's annoying. It moves first on the next turn, getting another Growl in before I finally take it down. So frustrating. So now I'm doing like a 6th to the EV maybe. Because the Spearow was able to hit a Leer, my defense is lowered, and as a result the EV is able to put out a lot of damage. It takes me to 7 hit points, I take it to red, and then EV tackles, knocking Growlithe out. So that's my first reset of this playthrough. Okay, let's try that again. That's not a great start so far, but Arcanine is the legendary Pokemon and it has incredible stats, so this playthrough can't be that painful. I defeat the rival, and then next for me is Viridian Forest. Here I catch myself a Pidgey so that I can use Fly later on in the playthrough, and then I'm going to defeat all of the bug catchers. When Bite runs out of power points, I'm at level 13, so I make it to Pewter City, heal up, and then I fight the junior trainer in Brock's gym. This doesn't level Growlithe up again, so this is the level that I'm going to fight Brock at. Let's see how it goes. He leads with Geodude. I go for Bite, and it does decent damage. Looks like I'm going to take it out in maybe 7 or 8 turns. The unfortunate thing here is that Growlithe just doesn't have enough defense, and by the time I knock the Geodude out, I only have 3 hit points left. So that's my second reset. So I've got to head back to the forest and do a bit more training. I'll aim for level 15 because this is over the next damage rounding threshold. If you didn't know, in Pokemon games, the damage calculation uses the Pokemon's level. Also, every time it does any multiplication or division, it always rounds down. And so as your Pokemon levels up, its damage actually increases non-linearly. Every time its level ends in a 0, 3, 5, or 8, it's doing significantly more damage than it was at the prior level. So let's see if level 15 is enough to take out Brock. Well, Bite gets a critical hit on the first turn, which is really nice. That speeds my progress up. And as a result, I'm able to knock the Geodude out in only 5 turns. I've got green health left over for the Onix. I get lucky again with the critical hit against Onix on the first turn. It goes for Screech, lowering my defense. I'm going to take a lot of damage now. And then it goes for Bide. Now, I mentioned in the introduction that Roar doesn't do anything in battle, but it can buy time and stall the Bide out so that the Onix isn't able to pay back any damage to Growlithe. Unfortunately, while it's good I can stall it out, it also doesn't improve Growlithe's position in any way like a move like Tail Whip would. Onix then goes for Bind, which hits 3 turns, taking me to orange health. Alright, things are taking a turn for the worst. I use Bite. This causes a flinch. Alright, that's good luck for me. However, then Onix gets a 4-turn bind, taking Growlithe all the way down to 11 hit points. And then Bite gets a Gen 1 miss. So frustrating. Onix tackles, taking Growlithe to 5 hit points. Okay, I think I've lost this one. Onix fails a Screech. I guess that's nice. I take it to red health, causing a flinch. Okay, that's good. And then when Onix could have knocked me out, it chooses Bide. And I can just attack through this one, knocking the Rock Snake out and taking a victory. So Growlithe defeats Brock with a time of 14 minutes and 12 seconds. Now, how will Vulpix do in this split? Well, it has the potential to get a much better time because it starts with Ember and Tail Whip. I just want to say here as we see the back sprite for Vulpix for the first time, all of these Pokemon have fantastic hair. which is specifically why I chose Manscaped as the sponsor for this video. Vulpix is a special attacker and it starts with Ember. This lets me defeat the Eevee in the lab in 4 turns. Pretty good. And because I have a special move, I don't think that I'm going to need as much training to defeat Brock, so I can head directly to Viridian Forest, skipping the optional training and the rival on Route 22. Since I'm a fairly weak first stage Pokemon, I think it does make sense to fight the bug catchers here. After all, Ember is super effective against their bug types, so I can take them out quickly. I do get lucky with Vulpix and run into a Pidgey, so I'm able to catch my flyer, and then I've made it to Brock's gym. And in here I skip the junior trainer, because Vulpix is level 10, which is over a damage rounding threshold. I might as well just attempt Brock at this level and see how it goes. First is Geodude, and Ember isn't doing very much. Like, it looks like it's going to take it out in about 5 hits. I can't believe how many times Geodude misses tackle though in this fight. Like, look at it, it just keeps missing. So I'm moving on to the Onix with green health, that's nice. Unfortunately though, at this level, Vulpix is not outspeeding. On the second turn, Onix moves first with Bide, and I attack into it with Ember. That's really frustrating. So there's a weird glitch in Generation 1 with how Bide works. If you use a move that doesn't deal damage but still successfully causes some sort of effect in the battle, then the damage that Bide accumulated on the previous turn is reapplied on the second turn. So in this case, when I use Tail Whip, Onix is actually going to accumulate damage from my previous Ember all over again. However, I get a lucky 3-turn Bide allowing me to use 1 more Tail Whip, so it does not accumulate damage on this turn. When it pays back damage, it takes Vulpix under half health, and now I'm really not certain that I can take the win here. Onix tackles Vulpix down to 10 health, it uses Bind next, taking me down to red health, and then it goes for Bide. And this gives me the opportunity to attack twice with Ember and knock it out. So Vulpix clocks in with a time of 4 minutes and 47 seconds against Brock. Okay, so the little fiery fox is definitely in the lead. Next is Route 3, and there's a choice that I have to make here. Do I want to fight the Lass with 2 Pokemon or the bug catcher with 4 Pokemon? In general, the Lass is usually a little bit faster, but here I decide to face the bug catcher. It's a little bit extra experience. After all, Ember is super effective. In Mount Moon, I pick up the rare candy, and then I decide to fight the Lass, who has 2 grass types. I think this is just going to be some fast training. With her out of the way, I head to the basement floor and fight the Super Nerd. After all, once I defeat this guy, I can pick up my prize, which is the Dome Fossil. And now there's only 1 trainer left before I make it to Cerulean City. It's Jesse and James. They lead with Ekans, Ember does about half to it, and then Poison Sting poisons Vulpix. Not a great way to start this fight. I knock it out on the next turn, level up to 16, learning Quick Attack, and then they send in Meowth. Ember does half, it goes for Bite, taking me under half health, and then apparently we're speed tied because it moves first, hitting Bite, taking Vulpix all the way down to 6 hit points before I knock it out and move on to the coughing. Oh no. Ember does less than half, I take poison damage, and then Smog finishes me. Now, I had not expected to reset here, and as a result, I did not save in front of them. My last save was actually in front of Brock, so it looks like I'm going to have to defeat him again. Now you might say, why not just blackout? Honestly, I just forgot and pressed the reset button because I'm so used to doing it. I really should have just blacked out, gone back to the Pokemon Center outside of Mount Moon, and then made my way back to Jesse and James. Still, Vulpix is going to be able to defeat Brock for a second time, faster than Growlithe did it on the first time. Well, that is if Brock doesn't beat me, like, okay, so I guess I have to fight him a 3rd time. Just to make things a little bit more consistent, I did decide to fight the junior trainer in his gym. That levels Vulpix up to level 11. And then I am going to win this 3rd fight against him, but I want to mention a quirky interaction here that happens at the very end of the fight. If you didn't know, Brock has 5 full heals per Pokemon, and he's going to use them 100% of the time if his Pokemon has a status condition. Also, he won't use a full heal if he's in the middle of a Bide. But in this case, I burn Onix, and then even if he uses a full heal, it will not restore his attack stat. So that's another advantage that Vulpix has going into this fight. If it burns either of his Pokemon, it cuts their attack. Okay, so with him out of the way, I crush the Super Nerd again, and then I fight Jesse and James. This time, I'm gonna be victorious, I just know it. But then Meowth outspeeds, hits a critical hit with Bite, taking Vulpix down to 18 hit points. It hits a scratch, and then I knock it out, so I only have 10 health left over for the coughing. Am I gonna lose here again? Luckily, coughing's first Smog misses. I'm only going to need one more hit to knock it out. It hits with Smog, which poisons me, but because I don't take any poison damage this turn, I survive, hit one more Ember, and knock it out. Okay, so I've made it to Cerulean City. It is worth noting that I am really not happy with my play with Vulpix here, but still it was able to get to Cerulean City faster than Growlithe was able to beat Brock. Because it makes absolutely no sense to face Misty next, I'm going to fight the rival on Nugget Bridge. He leads with Spearow, I go for Ember, it does more than half because of a critical hit. It hits me with one peck and then I knock it out. Next is Sandshrew. Now, I was really hoping for the 2-hit here, but I don't get it, and it hits 2 sand attacks before it goes down. Oh, this is not good. As a result, I miss an Ember on the Rattata, and then it hits me with Hyper Fang, and that knocks Vulpix out. Okay, so let's try that again. In the next battle, I take no damage from the Spearow. That's good. Sandshrew still uses a turn 1 sand attack, which is really annoying. It gets me with a second one. So frustrating. Rattata's next. Luckily, I hit it twice and take it out, and with that, I'm pretty sure that I've won. Oh, I also burn the Eevee, so that's really good. With its attack cut, it's not going to be able to knock me out, so I take the victory here. Now, with Bill saved from his freaky experiment, I'm going to bypass Misty's gym entirely and head towards the SSN next. After all, by defeating the rocket outside of Cerulean City, I'm going to earn myself the Dig TM. This is going to be Vulpix's best coverage move and its best physical move, because in Generation 1, Dig has 100 base power. But that's all not going to matter if the Machop just knocks me out with Karate Chop. Okay, so hopefully I don't get stuck here. Luckily, in the next fight, I am able to defeat him. So with that, I've got the TM for Dig. On the next route, I have to defeat the trainer that I have nicknamed Sandy. Her Pidgeys are really annoying, especially in this case where I'm not one-shotting them. Luckily, Vulpix makes it through without a reset. But then on the SSN, the Sailor takes me out with his Staryu. It's embarrassing. So instead of picking up Rest first, I'll pick up Body Slam. After all, this is going to be a great physical move. It's a little bit faster than Dig because it only takes one turn. After that, I defeat the Gentleman, earn myself the rare candy, and then I face the rival. Now this fight is usually easy if you learn Body Slam, but then the Spearow gets a critical hit with Fury Attack. In Generation 1, each subsequent hit also crits then, and this does more than half to me. Okay, not good. I don't quite knock out the Rattata because my attack stat isn't great, and that lets it hit a quick attack. And all of this spirals out of control and Vulpix gets another reset. Okay, so I'm really excited for when I can defeat Surge and get to Celadon City and use a Firestone on this thing, because it is really not performing very well so far. I defeat the rival on my next attempt, and then I head back to the restroom where I can defeat the Sailor and pick up my favorite TM. Okay, with all of that out of the way, I now have to face Misty. She leads with Staryu. Vulpix is level 25 and has a lot of speed, so I'm going to be able to go underground and hit the Staryu first. But unfortunately, Vulpix's attack isn't quite enough, and it survives, getting a water gun in before I take it down. Okay, so that's not great. Now, unfortunately, Starmie's faster, and it hits a Bubble Beam, taking Vulpix all the way down to 6 hit points. Okay, this is not good. I used Body Slam first turn in the hope that I would get Paralysis and cut Starmie's speed, but I don't, and as a result it follows up with another Bubble Beam and knocks Vulpix out. I was really hoping that in the next fight I might just get a better damage roll, but I get a worse one against the Staryu, so that's really not encouraging. As a result, Vulpix goes down again against the Starmie. Alright, so I fought a few additional trainers to see if that would give me enough damage. By the way, I was filming this before I knew about damage rounding, so that's why I did this. Obviously it isn't enough, and Vulpix goes down again, and despite getting Paralysis in the next fight, it goes down again. Alright, so there's a clear solution here. I just need to level up 2 more times so that Vulpix can learn Confuse Ray. At level 28, Dig is still not one-hitting the Staryu, which is frustrating to say the least. However, now I can confuse the Starmie on the first turn. Oh great, it just crits with Bubble Beam and knocks Vulpix out. By the way, when I'm leveling Vulpix up here, I am using 2 rare candies to take it up immediately to 28 so that I can have Confuse Ray. Hopefully this is going to pay off in the next fight. And this time Starmie hits itself. Okay, that's good. Body Slam takes it under half. Misty uses an X-Defend, which is a bit annoying. I take it to red health, it strikes back with Water Gun, and then Vulpix finishes it. So Vulpix clocks in with a Misty split of 30 minutes and 18 seconds. Honestly, not a particularly good performance. At least Surge is next, and I have Dig. Raichu goes for Growl first turn, which is annoying. I still do half. It hits a Mega Punch, which does a lot. Then Surge uses an X Speed. My next Dig takes it to red. It hits with Thunderbolt. Vulpix survives on 4 hit points, gets paralyzed, digs underground, and successfully connects on the next turn, knocking it out. Okay, so it clocks in with a lucky Surge split of 31 minutes and 22 seconds. I think it's time to head back and see how Growlithe is going to do in this same section of the game. After how Vulpix performed on Misty, I'm not really looking forward to it, but Growlithe does have an advantage here because it's mostly going to be using its physical attack stat. So once I get through Mount Moon and obtain Dig, it's going to be doing a lot more damage. At the end of the cave, I pick up the Dome Fossil, of course, and then I go up against Jesse and James. Now let's see if they can stop Growlithe in the same way that they stopped Vulpix. The Ekans goes for Leer, and then it faints. Next is Meowth, it goes for Bite. It actually does a decent amount, but then I knock it out, and I'm in a much better position going up against the Coughing. While it does take 3 turns to knock out, Growlithe does it successfully. It levels up to 18 and learns Ember. So now I'm arriving in Cerulean City, and of course here I'm going to face the rival first. He leads with Spearow. I go for Bite, it does more than half, it strikes back with Peck, and then I knock it out. Next is Sandshrew. Please don't Sand Attack. In this case, it goes for Scratch, and then it fails a Sand Attack, and then I take it down. Okay, so I should be able to do this. Rattata's next, I outspeed, hitting Ember. It does more than half. The rat hits my dog for actually decent damage, and then I knock it out. Eevee's all that remains. I hit Bite. It does just under half. The small dog fox thing hits Growlithe, taking it to 18 hit points, and it actually hits one more time, taking me all the way down to 10 hit points, but I still managed to win. So for both of these Pokemon, Nugget Bridge wasn't an issue. I didn't even show it in the Vulpix playthrough. That's because Ember is so good against most of the Pokemon here. And in this case, Pokemon like Geodude that I don't have a good type matchup against, I can just knock them out with Ember because they have so low special stats anyways. I defeat the Rocket and earn Dig before I take on Sandy. Unfortunately here, Bite is not one-hitting her Pidgeys, so I was exposed to Sand Attack shenanigans, but they don't play out today. On the SSN, I make use of Dig against the Sailor so that I can obtain Rest, and then I pick up the TM for Body Slam and the Rare Candy. So now Growlithe has really received a major moveset upgrade. Body Slam and Dig are fantastic physical moves, and as a result, the rival here is very easy. So with him out of the way, let's take on Misty. She leads with Staryu, and for maximum damage I use Dig, which takes it out in one hit. Okay, that is encouraging. She goes for X-Defend first turn with Starmie, giving me a free hit with Body Slam, but it only is doing about a quarter. Next, Starmie hits with Water Gun, doing just under half to Growlithe. My second Body Slam paralyzes, which is really convenient, and now because it's paralyzed, I go for Dig to get in as much damage as is possible. And I get so lucky here because Growlithe gets a critical hit and knocks Starmie out. So the Fire Popper beats Misty on its first attempt. Well done. Next is Surge, and of course he's going to be easy. I have Dig, I should be fine here. Oh, great, Raichu uses Growl first turn, really minimizes my attack. And then it goes for Mega Kick, gets a critical hit, and knocks Growlithe out. In the next attempt, I forgot to heal. Well done. However, Surge just drops the ball here by using an X speed. I hit Dig, it takes the Raichu down to red health. And then on the next turn, I hit with Body Slam and knock it out. So now we've reached the section of the game that these Pokemon should be excited for, because once I get to Celadon City, I'm going to be able to use the Firestone and make them evolve. And that brings up an interesting conundrum, especially for Growlithe. Do I use the Firestone when I arrive, or do I save it until after I've learned moves like Agility and Flamethrower? Well, before I make that decision, I'm going to have to tackle some tough opponents in Rock Tunnel. The first one is this Pokemaniac who has a Cubone and a Slowpoke. His lead does get Growlithe down to half health, but then the Slowpoke doesn't really do anything and I just knock it out, so that's one tough opponent down. But the second one is the self-destructing Hiker. Now Growlithe is prepared for him because I know Dig. It one-shots the first Geodude. The second one uses Defense Curl though, so it survives and hits a Rock Throw, doing a decent amount of damage. Last is Graveler. It also goes for Defense Curl, so it survives one hit, uses Tackle, and now I'm out of Dig. Okay, so I guess I'll have to knock it out with Ember. Graveler just goes for Tackle once more, and then I take it down. Okay, so I made it through the self-destructing Hiker on my first attempt. And with that, Growlithe has made it to Celadon City. Because it's a slow growth rate Pokemon, I'm definitely going into the Rocket Hideout to collect items today, but I tried to save some time here by only picking up the Nugget and then the Rare Candy. After that, I dig out and head to the department store. After selling a bunch of the items that I've collected to this point, I have enough money to buy 3 vitamins. Because Growlithe is mostly a physical attacker, I'm gonna invest in protein. Next, it's time for Pokemon Tower. And usually the rival in here is very easy. Unfortunately, the Furo moves first and goes for Growl, lowering my attack right off the bat, so that's not good. I knock it out without losing any health though, so that's good. I go for Dig against the Shelder. It does less than half. At least it misses a Clamp. But then after I use Bite, it hits a Clamp and it does so much to Growlithe. And yeah, then it survives, hits another Clamp, and knocks me out. Okay, so that did not go well. Things play out similarly in the next fight. I get both my attack and defense lowered by the Furo before I move on to the Shelder. The lucky thing here is that the rival has good AI, so he's not always going to use Clamp, because Withdraw is also a water type move. As a result, I defeat the Shelder, move on to the Vulpix, one-hit it with Dig, that's nice. Dig gets a critical hit against the Sandshrew, knocking it out, and then all that's left is the Eevee, but this thing's probably not a threat. It does hit some sand attacks, but I managed to take it out. Now access to Dig gives me an easy route to victory against the Chandlers, because I can one-shot all of their poison-type ghosts. Because of that, I decided to do a little bit of extra training. After all, Growlithe is only level 30. At the top of the tower, I defeat Jesse and James, and then I head to Cycling Road. Here, I'm also going to do extra training, because I've made the decision to hold off on using a Firestone until Growlithe reaches level 39 and learns Agility. I think that waiting for Flamethrower is just going to be way too long, but at the very least, I'd like to have access to a badge boosting move. Because at this point when I was filming, I hadn't figured out that you could use the brake on the bike by holding B. I accidentally bumped into this trainer and things got a little bit close against him. Growlithe gets taken down to red health, and that would have been really nasty if I had lost here because I haven't saved for a while. But luckily I defeat him and then I'm able to grab the rare candy. Next is the Safari Zone, and with that out of the way, I'm ready to backtrack to Erica's gym. Because her gym has a lot of trainers, and I'm a fire type, I figured that I should just beat them all, but here's the thing, Ember isn't that good against these Pokemon because they all have decent special stats, and Growlithe's special leaves a lot to be desired. After beating all but one of the trainers, Growlithe's level 35, so let's try Erica and see how this fight goes. Tangle is first, I go for Ember, it does about a third, and then it strikes back with Constrict. Luckily, it doesn't lower my speed. After getting hit by one more bind, I knock it out with Ember and move on to the Weepinbell. So because this thing is a part poison type, I think the Dig will be better. It takes it down to orange health, Weepinbell strikes back with Acid, and then I knock it out. So obviously it would make more sense if Erica used Sleep Powder with her final two Pokemon, but she's not going to do that because of good AI. Sleep Powder is a grass move, and Growlithe is a fire type. As a result, her Gloom is also spamming Acid, so I'm able to knock it out and take an easy victory. Growlithe clocks in with a time of 47 minutes and 20 seconds. Okay, so let's check in with Vulpix now as it's leaving Cerulean City heading towards Rock Tunnel. It easily sweeps through the Wrapping Lasses Pokemon with Ember, and then inside of Rock Tunnel it also has a close battle with the first Pokemaniac, but then the second one actually proves to be even more challenging. I get a quick paralysis with Body Slam, then Dig takes the Slowpoke to orange health. My next Dig almost finishes it off, but then Slowpoke confuses me with Confusion. Vulpix hits itself, Headbutt gets a massive critical hit, I hit myself again, and that takes Vulpix all the way down to red health. Okay, Slowpoke, please don't use Confusion. Well, it goes for Disable, Vulpix doesn't hit itself, and I finish it off. Alright, that was close, and that wasn't even supposed to be the most difficult battle in the tunnel, because the self-destructing hiker is still waiting. Now, while Vulpix has significantly less attack than Growlithe, I still think Dig makes the most sense because the rocks can self-destruct when I'm underground, which is what happens with the first one. Because of how Dig works, I stay underground for the second one and hit it with Dig, but it just barely hangs on. It goes for Tackle, and then I finish it off on the next turn. Okay, all that's left is the Graveler. I use Dig again, it goes for Rock Throw, and Dig gets a critical hit here, so I take it out. And with that, I've made it to Celadon City. Now, I'll confess here that back in April, my filming techniques weren't exactly what they are today. As a result, I don't actually have any footage of me in Celadon City, so I have no idea what I did there. I'm going to assume that I thought fire types were weak and went into the hideout and picked up the rare candy. I also probably gave Vulpix calcium instead of any other vitamin. So the next piece of footage I have is against the rival in Pokemon Tower. Unfortunately here, the Fearow beats Vulpix up again, and then after I defeat the Magnemite with a single Dig, I get very lucky against the Shelder. It just keeps going for Withdraw, and I eventually knock it out. Thank you for not using Clamp. After that, I knock out the Sandshrew quickly, but then the Eevee gets a bit scary, taking Vulpix down to 13 hit points, but I still manage to win. Okay, so let's see if Vulpix's Dig can one-hit the Chandler's Ghastly. And the answer is, yes it can. So there's no issues here. I defeat Jesse and James, finish the Safari Zone, and then I head over to Erica's gym. And if we check the clock, we can see that Vulpix is only a little bit ahead of Growlithe at this point. But here's where it has the potential to gain a massive advantage. Because as it defeats the Beauty with an Execute, it learns Flamethrower. This is probably the best Fire-type move in Generation 1, it has 100% accuracy and 95 power. And because Fire Spin is honestly trash, like 70% accuracy is just not good, I'm going to use my Firestone now and evolve Vulpix into a Ninetales. And so yeah, with my improved moveset and stats, Ninetales takes a quick victory over Erica. It clocks in with a time of 46 minutes and 23 seconds. It's typically the case that in Pokemon Yellow, Koga is incredibly challenging, but I don't think that that's going to be the case today. After all, Fire-type moves are super effective against his bugs, so I'm going to head to his gym next with Ninetales. While I'm defeating the jugglers, my Ninetales gets poisoned, which I was thinking could be to my advantage because then Koga won't be able to use Sleep Powder on me. However, I am missing the fact that he has good AI, so he's probably not going to use that move anyways. Alright, let's see if I can do this. Koga leads with Venonat. I go for Flamethrower, and it takes it out in one hit. Okay, that's good. The second one comes out, and it also goes down, and so does the third one. Okay, this is perfect. The Water-type Venomoth is last, and this is where things could get tricky for Ninetales. I win the speed tie and hit Flamethrower on the first turn. It does more than half, which is really nice, and then Venomoth uses Double Team. Okay, that's a bit annoying. On the second turn, it wins the speed tie, sets up Double Team again, and my Flamethrower misses. Okay, I'm taking poison damage during this, that's not good. Venomoth goes for Psychic on the next turn, and gets a critical hit, taking Ninetales down to orange health, and it also lowers my special. My next Flamethrower misses, I take poison damage, and Venomoth hits Psychic again, finishing Ninetales off. Okay, I have to say I did not expect that loss. However, it happened exclusively because of Double Team. I'm sure I'm going to be able to get through this on my next attempt. I polish off the Venonats with Flamethrower, Venomoth comes out, I hit it with Flamethrower on the first turn, and this time my Ninetales gets the critical hit and knocks it out in a single turn. So with Growlithe after Erica, I decided to go to Sylph. In here I can pick up some important items. A Carbos, a rare candy, an elixir, the card key, and then a protein. Also in here I can defeat some of the trainers, and that's so I can level Growlithe up to level 39 where it finally learns agility. I teach it in the place of takedown, and with this I'm finally ready to use the Firestone and evolve into an Arcanine. Because I'm here and I have such a big stat improvement now, let's try the rival. He leads with Sandslash. I go for Dig, it does less than half. It's not very good. Still, the Sandslash isn't very good either because I just knock it out over the next 2 turns. Dig 1 hits the Ninetales, and then Arcanine's made it to the Cloyster. I go for Ember because it's neutral against this thing. By the way, the text here is a glitch. Just know that it is doing neutral damage. And then Cloyster uses Clamp, and yeah, it gets a critical hit, and that's it for Arcanine. I tried again, I make it back to the Cloyster, and this time it doesn't get a critical hit, but I'm not able to knock it out fast enough, and as a result, I go down to Clamp again. Okay, it doesn't make sense to waste any more time in here with Arcanine. Let's head to Koga's gym. After all, I have Ember for his bugs. It's not as good as Ninetales' Flamethrower, but it'll have to do for today. Against the first Venonat, I'm doing more than half. That's good. I take a Psychic, it doesn't lower my special, and then I knock it out. Arcanine levels up to 40. That means I'm over a damage rounding threshold, which is really nice for my damage. Koga just uses an X attack, and then I take the next one out. Okay, time for the third Venonat. It does hit me with a Psychic, taking Arcanine to just above half health before I knock it out and move on to the Venomoth. Okay, this ground type is going to be really tricky to defeat. I outspeed going underground with Dig, but then it sets up Double Team. Ugh. Dig only does half. Venomoth sets up another Double Team. I try and switch into Ember because I'm taking a lot of poison damage, and Venomoth uses Psychic, lowering my special, meaning Ember does very little. I take poison damage, it sets up Double Team again. So I figured I just have to go for a Hail Mary here with Body Slam and hope that I hit. And I do, and it knocks Venomoth out. So Arcanine defeats Koga. It clocks in with a time of 54 minutes and 34 seconds. So Arcanine is just over 4 minutes slower than Ninetales to this portion in the game. I'd say that that's largely just because of its slow growth rate. However, I think there's the potential for Arcanine to start clawing back some time now. After all, it's reached its final form. Dig and Body Slam are both very powerful, it has agility, and I'm gonna head to Cinnabar Island next. That's so I can defeat Blaine and earn myself the Fire Blast TM. After all, it's gonna be really nice to get rid of Ember finally, but to do that, I have to actually beat Blaine, so let's take him on. He leads with Ninetales, Arcanine outspeeds, I go for Dig, and it gets a critical hit. Yeah, so that's it. His Ninetales goes down in one hit. Rapidash is next, and I decided to set up here. Now in Generation 1, if the player's Pokemon is hit by a move that alters its stats, the badge boost glitch occurs. If you look at the bottom left, you can see that my attack and defense stats also increase when my speed increases from agility. This is because the game is erroneously recalculating the badge boosts for those stats. As a result, this is going to slightly improve my damage with moves like Dig. However, I just get a critical hit on the Rapidash as well and knock it out in one turn. Okay, so that was good. Last is Arcanine. I outspeed with Dig, it does about half, Blaine's Arcanine hits with Takedown, and then my second Dig finishes it off. So with that, I've earned myself the Fire Blast TM. And this is going to be perfect against the rival in Sylph, because now I have a powerful special move that is hopefully going to be the answer to the Cloyster. Also, by the way, earning Blaine's badge means that my special stat now has the badge boost. I knock the rival's Sandslash out, take care of the Ninetales with Dig, and now it's time for the Cloyster. I go for Fire Blast, and yeah, this move isn't very accurate, so it misses, but Cloyster just uses Withdraw. Okay, that's good. I go for Fire Blast again. It misses again. Cloyster goes for Withdraw. All right, so far so good. I go for Fire Blast, and this time it hits, knocking the Cloyster out. Kadabra's next. Obviously, it's really physically frail, so I take it out with a single Body Slam, and all the rival has now is Jolteon. But Arcanine's faster, it uses Dig, and the Punk Rock Doggo faints. Having defeated the rival here, I now have access to a lot more experience through Jesse and James, and then Giovanni. After all, these battles are just not challenging. With them out of the way, it makes sense to go and face Sabrina next. Now, we can tell here that this is old play from me because my Arcanine has 129 speed. If this was a modern run, I would have ensured that it had 134 speed to move first against the Alakazam, but at least I'm going to outspeed both the Abra and the Kadabra. I'm able to knock them both out in one turn with Body Slam. Arcanine levels up to 44, getting 132 speed, which means it has one less speed than the following Alakazam. As a result, it moves first, using Psychic, which does about half, and then I hit with Body Slam, which doesn't knock it out. However, it does paralyze, cutting Alakazam's speed, and as a result I move first on the next turn and knock it out. Now with Sabrina out of the way, I need to mention that the next gym leader, Giovanni, is gonna be a problem. I'm going into this fight at level 46, and that's specifically so I have 138 speed, meaning that Arcanine is going to outspeed all of his Pokemon. I use Dig on Dugtrio. By the way, in Generation 1, if it uses Earthquake, it does not hit me if I'm underground. It misses Fissure on the next turn because it has to, it can't hit me if I'm faster, and then I finish it off with Body Slam. Next is Persian. I use Fire Blast against it. It burns, which is nice, minimizing Persian's damage, and then I knock it out on the next turn. I go for Dig because it's super effective against the Nidoqueen, and here's why Giovanni's going to be tough. Because Dig doesn't get the one hit, like it doesn't even take Nidoqueen to red health, and then it strikes back with Earthquake. I guess the silver lining there is that Arcanine did survive, but I'm not able to knock the Nidoking out, so it just finishes me on the next turn. Alright, I think it's time to use some rare candies and take Arcanine up to level 51. Hopefully this is going to give me better damage ranges against the Nidos. Also, I decide to set up against the Dugtrio. After all, it can't hit me with Fissure. After getting 2 turns of agility off and sustaining some damage from a Dig, I knock it out with Body Slam. I take the Persian down with 2 hits, and now, fingers crossed, hopefully I'm going to knock the Nidoqueen out. This time I get a critical hit, so it goes down. Not great information, but at least it's good that it's done. Nidoking's next, I go for Dig as well, and I get another critical hit. So that was really lucky. I'm not sure I would have had those damage ranges, but here's the thing. Rhydon is last, and I'm pretty sure Dig is not going to one-hit it. However, I get another critical hit, still it doesn't do enough damage, and that allows the Rhydon to use Rock Slide. But Arcanine hangs on with 14 hit points, and I finish it with my next Dig. Alright, so I've made it to the rival before the league. Because his Sandslash doesn't know Earthquake yet here, I can set up Agility fully boosting all my stats, and then hopefully sweep through the rest of his team. I thought that after these boosts, Body Slam would one-hit the Execute, after all it's a first stage Pokemon, and I didn't want to risk the miss with Fire Blast, but yeah, Body Slam doesn't KO, Execute uses Poison Powder, and now that's going to make Dig really annoying to use. Well, I have to go for it on the Ninetales, it one-shots, and then Cloyster's next. Time to roll the Fire Blast coin. This time it hits, knocking Cloyster out. Kadabra's next, Body Slam takes it down, and all that's left is Jolteon. Obviously, Poison isn't going to finish me off, so I knock it out, and with that, Arcanine is heading towards the league with a time of 1 hour, 6 minutes, and 43 seconds. So can Ninetales outpace this performance in the late gyms? With it, I think I can head to Sylph right away and defeat the rival here. After all, his Cloyster isn't going to be as scary because I have access to Flamethrower already. Plus, Ninetales has an incredible special stat even without Blaine's badge. Flamethrower crits and one-hits the Sandslash, but unfortunately it doesn't do enough damage to the Cloyster, it hangs on and uses Clamp. However, on display here is another advantage that Ninetales has in Generation 1. Because the special stat is a combined stat, it functions as both special attack and special defense, Clamp doesn't actually do nearly as much to Ninetales. I knock Cloyster out on the next turn, move on to the Magneton, Dig 1 hits the following Kadabra. It doesn't quite knock the Flareon out, but it does do enough damage to take it into potion range. As a result, it doesn't get to attack and I knock it out with my next Dig. So I didn't really like those damage ranges against the Cloyster. Let's go and face Blaine now so that they get a special boost. Unfortunately, my lower attack stat here is going to be a liability because I'm not able to knock the Ninetales out. Take some damage, move on to the Rapidash, I can't take it out either, and then it crits with Stomp, taking Ninetales down to low health. Now I figured that I would still be able to win here, after all, sometimes Blaine makes some terrible choices with his moves, but unfortunately I don't have quite enough health and the Arcanine takes me out with Fire Blast. However, I think that battle really was decided by the critical hit from Stomp. I try it again immediately after, and this time I'm able to get to the Arcanine with full health. Just to make it a little bit less consistent, I go for Confuse Ray on the first turn, and then after it hits itself, I'm able to knock it out with 2 follow-up digs. Next is Sabrina. Once again, I'm going into this fight with less than 134 speed. Even with less attack, Ninetales one-shots the Abra. It doesn't one-shot the Kadabra though, but it does paralyze, which is nice. I take it out on the next turn, and all that's left is Alakazam. Here, Ninetales gets some luck because Body Slam crits. Alakazam goes for Psychic, it doesn't KO, and I knock it out on the next turn. So Ninetales has made it all the way to Giovanni, and in this case, a lower defense stat might be my undoing. I go for Flamethrower against the Dugtrio, it doesn't knock it out. However, Giovanni just uses a Guard Spec and I take it down on the next turn. Okay, that's good. Persian's next, and it hits me with a Slash, which does more than half. Okay, I'm really not confident now. I go for Dig against the Nidoqueen, it doesn't even do half, and then it finishes me with Earthquake. I'm not really sure what I was thinking at this point because I tried again, and yeah, it goes exactly the same as the previous fight. I get hit by a Slash and then finished by an Earthquake. So it's time to use some rare candies with Ninetales as well. I mirror my play with Arcanine and take Ninetales up to level 51, despite how little sense this makes. It's so fun watching myself play the game 8 months ago when I knew much less. I get a lucky crit on the Dugtrio and knock it out in a single turn. Persian still goes for Slash, but it doesn't do more than half this time. Nidoqueen's next. And like Arcanine, I get a lucky critical hit and finish it in 1 turn. Okay, that's good, but I doubt I'll crit the Nidoking as well. I don't, it survives, uses Earthquake, and Ninetales goes down. Okay, so our Fiery Fox might finally have run into a barrier. I know Arcanine got by it with luck, getting 2 crits in a row, so maybe there's some potential for Ninetales to win with some luck too. After all, Giovanni's known for using Guard Specs at the worst possible time. And that's what happens in the next fight. I set up Confuse Ray against the Nidoking, he Guard Specs, and then I get a critical hit with Flamethrower and knock it out. Alright, so I've made it to the Rhydon, but what do I have against this thing? I try Flamethrower, it doesn't even do half, and then it knocks me out with Rock Slide. Okay, so I'm going to use a few more rare candies and take Ninetales all the way up to level 55. Once again, I crit the Dugtrio. I'm not quite able to knock the Persian out with a single Flamethrower. I get another lucky crit on the Nidoqueen with Dig, knocking it out in 1 turn. Like, how many of these am I gonna get? It just seems so constant. But I don't crit the Nidoking when I need it the most. It goes for Earthquake, it gets a critical hit, and Ninetales goes down. I tried again, I make it back to the Nidoking with full health, so I was feeling good about this. And then I get a Gen 1 miss with Flamethrower and it finishes me with Earthquake. Are you kidding? Like, that's ridiculous. I tried again, but this time the Nidoqueen finishes me with a critical hit from Earthquake. And at this point, I resign myself to the fact that I think I just need more levels. I do some training, which takes Ninetales up to level 52, and then after rare candies, I'm at level 59. Okay, let's do this. I go for Flamethrower, it gets a Gen 1 miss again, and Dugtrio hits me. Like, that needs to stop happening. Could that please stop happening now? Dig still isn't one-hitting the Nidoqueen, but Ninetales does survive its Earthquake. I guess that's good. Giovanni Guard Specs the Nidoking, so I do make it past it and arrive at the Rhydon. Okay, I think that I have to use Confuse Ray here because I'm definitely not going to one-hit. Unfortunately, Rhydon doesn't hit itself and Ninetales goes down. Alright, at this level, things are working better for me because I'm taking less than half from Nidoqueen's Earthquake. But the problem is that Nidoking is more offensive, so it does more damage and it finishes Ninetales off anyways. What could the answer be? Well, if I replace Confuse Ray with Fire Blast, maybe I can do more damage against the key opponents. I can use Flamethrower and its higher accuracy to take out the Dugtrio and the Persian in 1 hit, and then on the Nidoqueen I can use Fire Blast and great, it doesn't get the KO. Nidoqueen uses Earthquake and Ninetales gets taken to just above half. I finish it with Flamethrower and move on to the Nidoking. Alright, I guess I lose here, I was pretty defeated so I just went for Flamethrower, but Giovanni uses a Guard Spec and I knock the Nidoking out. Okay. At least I get to test and see how much damage Fire Blast does to the Rhydon. I go for it, it does just over half, but it burns Rhydon, and then it misses Rock Slide. Okay, that is the luck that Ninetales needed. I use Flamethrower, finish it off, and Giovanni is finally defeated. But now Ninetales is significantly behind Arcanine. This Giovanni split alone is 7 minutes behind Arcanine's final rival split, and I still have to defeat him with Ninetales. For this fight, I actually chose to teach Mimic in the place of Fire Blast. After all, I don't want to have to use that move anymore. This way I can Mimic Slash from the Sand Slash, and this move is always going to crit. I knock it out with Flamethrower on the next turn. Flamethrower takes care of the Execute. Cloister's next. I go for Flamethrower again, and it gets a crit, knocking it out. Alright, this fight is turning out to be very easy. Dig one-shots the Magneton, Slash one-shots the Kadabra, and I got this move specifically for it because it loves to set up Reflect. And all that's left is the Flareon. I go for Dig, and it knocks it out in one hit. Alright, so with that, both these Pokemon are off to face the League. Ninetales, though, is just over 8 minutes slower than Arcanine. If this was a video that I was filming today, there would be no way for it to catch up at this point, but because I was less skilled back when I filmed this, I do think that there is potential for Ninetales to catch up, but that does still seem highly unlikely. Like, this little fiery fox would need a miracle. So let's switch back over and see how Arcanine does with the League. Lorelai's first and she opens with Dugong. I go for Body Slam because I want to damage it in case it uses Rest on the next turn. I get a lucky Paralysis, Dugong doesn't move, which is great, and then here I'm going to try and set up Agility. After all, I want to boost my stats as much as possible before I move on to the rest of the fight. Dugong damages Arcanine a little bit with Aurora Beam. By the way, Lorelai's AI just occasionally considers all moves neutral with Dugong. It's so you don't get into a soft lock with Rest. That's why she used this move here. Anyways, I knock the Dugong out and move on to the Cloister. Okay, Fire Blast, please do this. And it does, because it got a critical hit. There have been a lot of critical hits in these playthroughs. Next is Slowbro, and unfortunately it's going to use Withdraw and Surf. I went for Dig, but I probably should have used Body Slam because it gets really set up as a result. I can't do very much damage to it. Lorelai heals with a Super Potion, which is actually useful in this case, and as a result, the Slowbro is able to take Arcanine down with a Surf. Okay, let's try that again. I think I can play better against the Slowbro this time. However, I could also get less lucky against the Dugong, and as a result, I'm moving on to the Cloister with orange health. Here, I get to roll Fire Blast and see if it knocks it out without a critical hit, and luckily it does. Slowbro's next, and it looks like Body Slam is going to get a 3-hit. Unfortunately, Withdraw just barely saves it. Slowbro uses a Surf, Arcanine hangs on with 11 hit points, and I knock it out. So, while I do take the Jinx out in one hit, it's unlikely that I'm going to one-hit the Lapras. I go for Fire Blast, it does just more than half, Lapras uses Hydro Pump, and yeah, it misses. So with that, Arcanine hits another Fire Blast, and Lorelai is defeated. Okay, up next is the Hiker. This guy is always bad, so Arcanine is going to easily defeat him. After all, Dig is super effective against the Onix. It doesn't quite get the KO, it uses Slam, doing a tiny bit to me, and then I knock it out. After all, Onix is like the worst offensive Pokemon in the entire game. Next is Hitmonchan. I crit with Dig and knock it out, and then it's time for Hitmonlee. It gets an X Defend, that's annoying. Survives my Dig, uses Double Team. Okay, that's frustrating. By the way, here we get to see an interesting Gen 1 design quirk. Hitmonlee uses High Jump Kick, it misses. As a result, it keeps going and crashes, and this only does 1 hit point of damage to the fighting type. I continue to miss because of Double Team, it sets up more. I continue to miss. Hitmonlee uses Mega Kick, doing a decent amount to Arcanine, and then it uses another Mega Kick, which hits, gets a critical hit, and knocks Arcanine out.
Okay, so that wasn't good, well, I guess I have to do this fight again.
Then in the very next fight, Onix critical hits and takes Arcanine down to orange health. Hitmonchan does some damage because I can't finish it fast enough, and so I'm on red health for the Hitmonlee. Luckily, I paralyze it and knock it out. Okay, I should really be using Fire Blast against the Onix. I know that it technically resists Fire Blast, but it has terrible special. Still, I managed to take it out and move on to his ace, Machamp. Now, this thing usually likes to just use Leer or get an X Defend or something like that, but today, it uses Submission and finishes Arcanine off for the second time. Okay, I think that this is a first for any playthrough. I don't think I have ever lost to Bruno twice. And yes, I am going to talk about Bruno today, because apparently he's a member of the Elite Four. So let's take him seriously. I used 2 rare candies, and I'm also going to set up Agility on the first Onix to boost all my stats. Dig still isn't one-hitting the Onix, please use Fire Blast. Well, I can't go back in time and make myself do it. But then I realize, yeah, the Hitmonchan has low special, so I do use Fire Blast. It knocks it out in 1 hit, albeit a critical hit. Next is Hitmonlee, Fire Blast takes it out. I once again get seduced by super effective damage and use Dig on the second Onix, but it does take it down. Okay, time for the Machamp. This time I'm gonna beat him. I use Fire Blast, it does so much damage, and finishes it off in a single hit. Bruno is no more. And now hopefully that is the last time I have to talk about him on the channel. So Agatha's next, and I'm really glad because I need an easy fight with Arcanine. My poor pupper really got beat up in the last fight, and yeah, it's kind of got its tail between its legs, it's feeling real bad about things, but at least this fight should be fine because I have Dig, which is super effective against all of Agatha's Pokemon. Well, not the Golbat. I have said that in the past, and people like in the comments are just like, actually, the Golbat is a flying type. I know the Golbat is a flying type, I just like wanted one sentence that I could say for Agatha so that we could skip all the footage and just move on to Lance, who is next. And here's the problem with Lance. He starts with a Gyarados, and this thing knows Hydro Pump. Since Lance has good AI, he's always just going to spam it against my fire types, and I am going to have to get lucky to defeat him, because look how much damage Body Slam does. Yeah, it does like maybe a third. Luckily, I paralyzed the Gyarados. It hits Hydro Pump, which does way more than half to my Arcanine. Okay, so either a Hydro Pump miss or a paralysis. I get the paralysis, and because of that, I'm able to knock Lance's lead out. Okay, perfect. Moving on to the Dragonair. I go for Body Slam, it doesn't KO. Dragonair uses Slam, and then I knock it out on the next turn. Okay, this isn't looking good, but I did teach Arcanine Mimic so that I can steal Ice Beam off the next Dragonair. Here's the thing though, this one knows Bubble Beam, which is super effective, and it finishes Arcanine off. Okay, so I'm gonna need to set up Agility at least once here, probably more than once. I get hit by Hydro Pump twice, and so Arcanine goes down. This time I try to set up Agility just once and then see if I can 2-hit with Body Slam, but I can't, so I go down to Hydro Pump again. And then in the next fight, I manage to get a critical hit with Body Slam, which takes the Gyarados out. However, then the next Dragonair just paralyzes Arcanine, and as a result, I have like no speed. The second Dragonair outspeeds, uses Bubble Beam, and Arcanine faints. So, one of the ways that I can proceed is a Hydro Pump missing, and that's what happens in the next fight. And in this battle, I made the tough decision to replace Fire Blast with Rest. After all, I really don't want to replace Agility because I might need the setup for the champion. Also, Body Slam is like my best attacking move. I have replaced Dig at this point because it's useless against Lance, and I need Mimic so that I can steal Ice Beam to knock out the dragons. So I have to let go of Fire Blast. Because I have Rest, I can now heal on the Dragonairs. It is annoying because when I get paralyzed, my speed won't be recovered. However, if I use Agility, I can actually recalculate my speed, removing the debuff from paralysis. Boosting your speed with Agility is actually the only way you can do this in Generation 1. Even using an item will not recover your speed after you've been hit with paralysis. So with Rest, I'm able to get to the second Dragonair, then I just forget that I need Ice Beam and I knock it out right away. Okay, so I guess I gotta knock the Aerodactyl out slowly with Body Slam. At least I have Rest so I can heal up during this fight. I take it down and move on to Lance's ace, Dragonite. And here's the thing, I'll probably survive one hit so I can use Mimic and take Blizzard. However, then Dragonite uses Hyper Beam, gets a critical hit, and knocks Arcanine out. Okay, so it's back to gambling against the Gyarados. But in the very next fight, I get a critical hit, Paralyze, it misses Hydro Pump, and then I knock it out. This time on the second Dragonair, I remember to mimic Ice Beam, and with it, I'm able to sweep through Lance's final 3 Pokemon. Ice Beam one-hits the Aerodactyl, and it also one-hits his final Dragonite. Arcanine clocks in after the Elite Four with a time of 1 hour, 19 minutes, and 8 seconds. But now the question is, how will Ninetales deal with the League? Well, first of all, because of the setbacks in time that it had at Giovanni, it's actually starting the league with a comparable time that Arcanine had when it defeated Lance. So I think the Fiery Fox needs a miracle now. Lorelei's first, I use Flamethrower on the Dugong, and it knocks it out with a single critical hit. Nice. Next is Cloyster. I go for Flamethrower, and it goes down in a single hit as well. Okay, that's pretty good. On the Slowbro, I can use Mimic to grab Amnesia. This way I can set up my special. While Slowbro does hit with Surf, it just doesn't do very much, and then I continue my setup. After all, sometimes it's going to use Withdraw, which it does on the next 2 turns. By the time I'm fully set up, Slowbro's Surfs are now doing very little, so the only risk here would be if it hits with a critical hit. And it has very little speed, so that's unlikely. I go for Flamethrower, and it knocks the Water type out in 1 hit. Next is Jinx. I go for Flamethrower and it finishes the Jinx in a single hit, and now all Lorelei has left is her ace, Lapras. I go for Flamethrower, and in this case it gets a critical hit, and in Generation 1 this means it bypasses my beneficial stat alterations, so Lapras survives, but Lorelei just uses a Super Potion and I finish it on the next turn. Okay Bruno, please do not defeat me like you defeated Arcanine. But in this case, Flamethrower just sweeps his entire team. Yeah, it one-hits everything except the Machamp, of course. It uses Strength, does very little, and then I finish it off on the next turn. Alright, I've made it to Agatha, and I am a little bit more worried about her with Ninetales than I was with Arcanine, and that's just because Dig won't be doing as much damage. However, it still does enough to knock the first Gengar out, and that really increases my confidence. I go for Flamethrower against Golbat, it knocks it out in one critical hit, and then against Haunter I start using Dig again. Agatha switches it out, I one-shot the Arbok, another critical hit, like so many critical hits. These are some fast Pokemon after all. Dig one hits the Haunter, and all that's left is her ace Gengar. Will I one-hit it? Well, the answer is yes. So Ninetales has made it to Lance. Will its higher special stat give it a better and more reliable chance of winning against the Gyarados? Let's find out. I go for Body Slam. It gets a critical hit on the first turn. Gyarados misses Hydro Pump, and yeah, then my second Body Slam critical hits and knocks it out. I cannot believe the luck. Like, what was that? Against the first Dragonair, I go for Dig. I wanted to avoid Thunder Wave, which I do in this case, and knock it out on the next turn and move on to the second Dragonair. Here, I steal Ice Beam. It hits Bubble Beam, which does so little to Ninetales. Ice Beam finishes it. Ice Beam takes down the Aerodactyl as well. It did get a crit, nice. And then it's time for his ace Dragonite. Of course, Ice Beam does 4 times damage, and I take it out in a single critical hit. Another critical hit! Someone other than me has to go back and count the number of critical hits that are in this video. I will not be doing it. After all, this video is already taking enough of my time. So Ninetales finished the league with a time of 1 hour, 21 minutes, and 49 seconds. It's actually back in it. Because of the luck on Lance, I think that it actually still could put out a competitive time with Arcanine. I cannot believe that I'm saying that. But there's still one challenge left, and that's the champion. His lead is Sandslash, and in this fight it knows Earthquake. So I really need Flamethrower to be able to knock it out in a single turn. And it does. Next is Alakazam, and I want to do maximum damage to this thing, so I go for Dig. It takes it to red, then Alakazam hits with Kinesis, which is annoying. At least it badge boosts me, and my next Body Slam knocks it out. Okay, time for the Exeggutor. Now I'm not really sure what I'm doing here, because I'm using Body Slam against it. Like, just use Flamethrower. Why am I not using Flamethrower? I don't know. Anyways, I take it down over 3 turns and move on to the Magneton. I go for Dig, it takes it out in a single hit. Next is Cloyster. I go for Flamethrower against it, and I get a critical hit which knocks it out in 1 turn. So all the champion has left is Flareon. I go for Dig, and it takes it out in 1 turn. With that, Ninetales clocks in with a time of 1 hour, 22 minutes, and 51 seconds, with 22 resets at level 66. This took 4 hours and 27 minutes of game time. Alright, so Arcanine needs to beat the champion quickly. If it can't, Ninetales will have won this preliminary round. So let's see how it can do. First is Sandslash, and here I decide to set up because I need to maximize the amount of damage that Body Slam can do. Sandslash hits Earthquake, and it does half to Arcanine. Okay, if I set up Agility one more time, what's actually going to happen is it'll boost my defense and I'll survive the next Earthquake. I do, but still that's not good enough, because if I use Rest, Sandslash is still outputting enough damage that it's going to knock me out before I wake up. Or it's just going to get a critical hit and take Arcanine out right away anyways. Okay, let's try that again because there's another strategy that I can use here. I can use Mimic to steal Earthquake, and then I roll for damage with Body Slam to see how much it's doing to the Sandslash. And it is not doing very much. As a result, Arcanine goes down again. Alright, I need to figure this out fast because Ninetales' time is approaching quickly. Maybe instead of setup, I should just attack with Body Slam, hope for paralysis, and then knock the Sandslash out right away. I get a crit with my first Body Slam, which is encouraging. Sandslash goes for Earthquake. It doesn't get a critical hit, so I survive. I go for a follow-up Body Slam, it doesn't paralyze, then Sandslash knocks Arcanine out. Okay, let's try that strategy again. This time my second Body Slam paralyzes, but Sandslash still moves and knocks me out with Earthquake. Alright, so at this point, I was starting to get sad because I realized that Fire Blast would probably one-shot this thing. Arcanine goes down again, and again, and again to Earthquake, and as a result, it's gonna be slower than Ninetales. Now here's the thing with a strategy like this. It always feels like I'm so close to pulling it off. It could be the very next fight that I roll the perfect paralysis or get a crit with Body Slam and get through the Sandslash and make it to the rest of the fight. Once I do that, I have rest, so I'm going to be able to recover at the Exeggutor, and then I have a lot more play. Plus, the only Pokemon on the Champions team that is really a threat for Arcanine is going to be the Cloyster. However, I actually do need to get by the Sandslash, and it just refuses to go down today. So now, I have 30 resets. And at this point, I had sort of decided that I'm like, I want to see how long it takes me to knock this Sandslash out. And then Body Slam gets the paralysis. I survive Earthquake, Sandslash doesn't move, and as a result, I get to take it out for the first time. Okay, that is really good. Alakazam's next. I go for Body Slam, it just barely survives, hits a Kinesis, which is really annoying. My next Body Slam misses, and Alakazam uses Psychic, which lowers Arcanine's special. I miss on the next turn, and Alakazam finishes me with Psybeam. Okay, so that felt like I got pretty unlucky against the Alakazam. I think one of those Body Slams should have hit and knocked it out, and if I had done that, even with the Kinesis on the field, I could have healed on the Exeggutor. At least that's what I was probably thinking in this moment, because I decided to keep fighting. Reset after reset after reset after reset continue to stack up against the Sandslash. And here we're just going to do a small time jump ahead from 37 resets to 47 resets. By the way, I was streaming these playthroughs, and it was at this point that I had just fully decided that I was just going to beat the champion with Arcanine at this level without blacking out. After all, this is my first preliminary playthrough. I'm going to do follow-up playthroughs to see how this thing can really perform, especially when I try and make each fight consistent. But in this case, I was like, no, I'm going to do it. I'm going to be stubborn. I'm going to see how long this takes. And yeah, are you ready? Because in this fight, I knocked the Sandslash out. Okay, so I've made it to the Alakazam for the second time. I go for Body Slam, and I get a critical hit knocking it out. Okay, I made it to the Exeggutor. I can do this. I go for Body Slam first turn because I really wanted to get paralysis against it. After all, if I can do that, that would be great. It doesn't work, so then I decide to set up agility a little bit and use rest. Exeggutor is obviously going to annoy me with moves like Barrage and Stomp, but they're not very good. So I can set up agility fully, boosting all my stats, and then use rest to heal before I proceed. This took a while, and before I knock the Exeggutor out, I mimic Hypnosis, because I want a way to be able to get by the Cloyster. After all, I don't think I'm going to be able to knock it out quickly with Body Slam. I finish the Exeggutor off, and then Cloyster comes out. And I got so lucky here, Hypnosis puts it to sleep on the first turn, and then it stays asleep, and I knock it out over the 3 following turns. Ninetales is next. I hit with Body Slam, it does more than half, and then I finish it on the next turn. But you might have noticed a problem here. Arcanine has 1 PP of Body Slam left, so what that means is I'm going to need to one-hit the Jolteon. If not, I'll have to defeat it with Struggle. I go for Body Slam, but the Punk Rock Doggo survives with red health. Okay, you have to be kidding me, that is really annoying. So what makes most sense is put the Jolteon to sleep with Hypnosis, and then spam out Agility PP as fast as possible. Now everyone brace yourself, there's going to be some flashing lights here because we're going to accelerate this footage a lot. By the way, you'll notice here that I'm spamming out Agility and Hypnosis first and saving Rest. That's because if I get through all the PP of the other moves, then I can use Rest to heal, meaning I'll be at the most possible health when I finally start using Struggle. And then Jolteon hits me with a Thunder Wave. By the way, look at my speed, it's 11. This is because every time it reestablishes paralysis after I heal it, it further quarters my speed. So yeah, Arcanine is really not moving first now. And then Jolteon hits a critical hit with Thunder, and Arcanine survives with 6 hit points. Okay, I'm fully paralyzed, but I just need to be able to get Rest off on the next turn. And then Jolteon uses Quick Attack. So, I lost this fight. I can't believe how bad I felt in this moment. Also because my fiance and I had plans, and I really wanted to stream the conclusion of this for all of my viewers. Alright, what if I use Toxic against the Sandslash? Can I somehow outlast it with Rest? The answer is no, I definitely can't. So I guess what I'm back to is defeating the Sandslash with Body Slam luck. So I actually had to stop streaming here and come back to this playthrough later. And at this point, I was fully committed to the meme. Like, yeah, I could just black out, but also if I just black out, then I have to beat the entire league with this moveset. I will not have Fire Blast for any of the league. And yeah, that just doesn't sound fun. So I'm going to improve Arcanine in its next playthrough. For now, we are stuck with this awfulness. And just look at the reset counter. Yeah, it goes from 49 to 50, from 50 to 58, from 58 to 61. Okay, so let's accelerate things here a little bit. 72 resets. Oh, I actually managed to get by the Sandslash here. But then the Alakazam confuses me. As a result, I can't heal against the Exeggutor, and yeah, I get knocked out. Just great. All right, 81 resets and counting. At 89, I actually make it by the Sandslash, and I get by the Alakazam, so that's perfect. Let's see if maybe this is the fight. At this point, I was just really hoping that Arcanine was going to do this under 3 digits of resets. By the way, to this point on my channel, I haven't had a single challenge where I've had triple-digit resets. So I'm really hoping that this is not the one. I defeat the Exeggutor, and this time I mimicked Stomp, specifically so I could do more damage to the Jolteon. However, as a result, the Cloyster just clamps me. It does so much, but I do manage to take it out. Okay, Ninetales is next. I'm going to rest here, but it uses quick attack and knocks Arcanine out. However, only a few resets later, I make it past the Sandslash again. Okay, this is starting to feel better. I think I can do it. Let's try mimicking something else, because maybe healing is really the important thing. If I mimic Leech Seed from Exeggutor, I'll have a different way of healing that isn't just rest. I knock the Exeggutor out, move on to the Cloyster, and yeah, then it gets a critical hit with Clamp and finishes Arcanine. Okay, so cue the montage. Reset, 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 and here we go. That is the 100th reset, the first triple-digit resets on the channel. But I never would have guessed it because it's a fully evolved Pokemon, the Pokemon that is the legendary Pokemon. So today, it's legendary for a reason that it probably doesn't want to be legendary for. And here's the thing, like, yeah, I've reached 100 resets, but I am nowhere near out of the woods yet because here's 115. Like, yep, it's still fainting. 116, yeah, still fainting. 117, still fainting. 118, still fainting. I am stubborn. I am going to keep going until I defeat the champion with this moveset at this level. And then I make it by the Sandslash again. I have to narrate every one of these fights, by the way, because they come around like once every 10 resets. I paralyzed the Alakazam, and then I decided to get a little bit risky. What if I use Mimic here and steal Psychic? I knock it out and move on to the Exeggutor, and I decided today that I didn't want to have things slow down here, so I just knocked it out right away after using Rest only once. Okay, so I've arrived at the Cloyster with full health. Now it has low special, so hopefully Psychic can do it. I get a big critical hit taking it to orange, and I also lower Cloyster's special. Okay, I think that's what I needed. Clamp is doing so little to me now, and as a result, I knock it out. Ninetales is next, I go for Body Slam, it takes it to red, and then I finish it on the next turn. So I've arrived at the Jolteon with a lot of PP, and with green health. It misses Thunder, and I hit a second Body Slam knocking it out. Arcanine has done it! It clocks in with a time of 2 hours, 5 minutes, and 54 seconds, with 119 resets at level 61. This took 4 hours and 44 minutes of game time. Right now, emotionally, I feel like I know which two-stage fire type is the best. I think that it's Ninetales. And in these videos, I like to be really exhaustive though, so let's go and do some follow-up playthroughs because I really want to figure out which two-stage fire type is the best. So of course, what we need to do next is test Rapidash. I felt like it was only fair here to start with Ponyta. After all, I started with the other two at their pre-evolved forms, and now I need to mention something that's very different with the Rapidash line, and that's the fact that it doesn't use a Firestone to evolve. It evolves at level 40. As a result, once Rapidash evolves, it can still learn new moves. The unfortunate thing is that this Fire Horse does not have a particularly good level up learn set. It gets access to Ember at the start, but only Ember, and then at level 30 it starts learning new moves. It gets Tail Whip, Stomp, Growl, Fire Spin, Takedown, and Agility. So while it does get a badge boosting move, it gets it as late as level 40, and it also doesn't have access to Flamethrower. So like Arcanine, it's probably going to be using a lot of Fire Blast. And now let's compare all three of their stats. So Rapidash is sort of like a blend between the two. It has speed on its side, it's actually faster than Ninetales, and it is primarily a physical attacker. It actually has the same special attack that Arcanine has. Unfortunately for it, it's the least bulky of the three. It has a low defense stat and a low HP stat. By the way, I just want to mention Ponyta's back sprite. Yes, it has great hair like all of these Pokemon. Surprisingly enough, I don't actually take an easy victory over the rival in the lab because my defense is pretty low. I take a lot of damage and Ponyta almost goes down. So in this case, because I have Ember, which is a special move, I think that I can bypass the rival on Route 22 and go straight towards Brock. I defeat all the bug catchers on my way, and now let's see how this fire type goes up against Brock's rocks. Geodude's first, I go for Ember, and it does very little, but luckily it burns. As a result, the Geodude's attack stat is cut for the rest of the battle, even when Brock uses a full restore. Because of that, I'm able to knock it out and move on to the Onix with green health. It fails a Screech, then hits a Screech, so my defense stat is a single digit now. Not good. But at the critical moment, Onix goes for Bide, allowing my Ponyta to hit with Ember and knock it out. So Ponyta clocks in with a Brock split of 4 minutes and 39 seconds. So it's off to a fast start just like Vulpix. However, with stats more similar to Arcanine, I'm very scared for the champion. Now as I head out onto Route 3, I'm just going to mention something about my behind the scenes process. And that was the fact that I was filming this just before I was thinking about filming Horsey. And yeah, that's why the nickname for my Horsey video was Ponyta, and the nickname for this video is Horsey. I have to say, recording voiceover for all this footage is extremely hard to get right, because I just keep looking at the word Horsey and going like, that's what I should say. No, it's not. Don't say Horsey. So I'm so sorry if I say Horsey at some point during this Rapidash playthrough. Also, since I'm talking about my process, I'm just going to mention here that this video has been very frustrating to put together. Like, not to mention how frustrating Arcanine was to finish just the first playthrough with, but yeah, the fact that this footage is so old is like a different level of frustration. I did consider filming all of these playthroughs again, but I felt like that missed out on so much of the character of the narrative that was Arcanine's story. After all, this channel isn't about perfect plays. This channel is about watching my journey and seeing what happens. Okay, so let's get back to the playthrough. At the end of Mount Moon, Ponyta has a close call against Jesse and James. So after this fight in Marowak, it's feeling much more similar to Vulpix. Against the rival on Nugget Bridge, I actually have another close call here. Ponyta defeats him with only 7 hit points remaining. I really cannot wait until this thing learns a physical move, and unfortunately for it, this is actually a lot further away than it was for Ninetales or Arcanine, because one key difference between these 3 evolutionary lines is that Ponyta does not learn Dig. After all, hooves are not very good for digging with, so I have to make it past Sandy before I finally get my first physical move, which comes in the form of Body Slam on the SSN. However, now that I have a physical move, I think that Ponyta is going to be really supercharged. I make quick work of the rival in the SSN, I backtrack to pick up Rest. After all, I really want to take this TM just because Arcanine needed it, and Rapidash is going to be very similar to it. With that, I dig back to Cerulean City, and now I'm ready to face Misty. She leads with Staryu, I go for Body Slam, and I knock it out in a single hit. Okay, perfect. Ponyta levels up to 25 over a damage rounding threshold, and then I have to face Starmie. I go for Body Slam, it does half, Starmie's paralyzed, it uses Water Gun, gets a critical hit and does a lot of damage, but I get another Body Slam in and finish it off. Okay, so Ponyta is the only fire type to make it this far into the game without a reset. Up next is Surge, and for him, I don't have Dig, which is a bit annoying. My Body Slam isn't doing half to the Raichu, it hits a Mega Kick, taking me under half health. My next Body Slam doesn't paralyze, as a result it moves first, hits Mega Punch, and Ponyta goes down. Okay, there's its first reset. Unfortunately, the same thing plays out in the next fight. It finishes me off with 2 Mega Kicks, but in the third attempt, I finally paralyze the Raichu and knock it out. Ponyta clocks in with a time of 19 minutes and 40 seconds. It is much faster than the other two to this point in the game. Now, Dig isn't only useful against Surge, because it was also the way that the other two got by the self-destructing Hiker in Rock Tunnel. Without access to any other moves, I'm gonna have to defeat him with just Body Slam and Ember. Of course, these rock ground types have low special stats, so Ember is gonna make the most sense. I luckily burn the first Geodude, meaning its self-destruct is gonna do half damage, but it still does a third to Ponyta. I unfortunately don't burn the second Geodude, it self-destructs and takes me down to 9 hit points. As a result, when the final Graveler blows up, Ponyta goes down. Okay, let's try that again. This time I don't get any burns. The first 2 Geodudes just self-destruct, and Ponyta goes down. In the next fight, Graveler self-destructs, and I go down again. Alright, this is not looking very good. Even leveling up more won't really help the situation here. After all, I could go to 35 and get Growl. If I can use that, I can lower their attack stat, and then self-destruct will deal less damage. However, that's 7 levels away, and that just seems like overkill at this point. I haven't mentioned what Ponyta and Rapidash's growth rate is, and it's medium fast, so similar to Ninetales. And as I continued to lose here, my brain started to think that maybe I would have to level up. But finally, after my 7th reset, I get very lucky against Graveler and knock it out. In Celadon City, I spend some time in the Hideout grabbing the rare candy here, and then I head to the department store. Because Rapidash is a physical attacker, I choose to invest in proteins, buying 3 of them, and then I head to Pokemon Tower to face the rival. Like the other 2 fire types, this fight is not particularly easy. It's kind of surprising because usually he's very bad here. Ponyta just barely squeezes by with 15 hit points remaining. And then I have to face the Chandler, and this is another reason that not having Dig is a very big problem, because these Ghastly can be really annoying with Confusion, Nightshade, and potentially Paralysis with Lick. As a result, Ponyta has 1 reset here. Next, I train on all the Grass-type trainers in Erica's gym. I think this is the best choice for all 3 of these lines, and that brings me to level 34 before Erica. She leads with Tangela. I knock it out over 3 turns with Body Slam. Next is Weepinbell. I continue using Body Slam here because look at my attack stat, it's 104, my special stat is 65, and even though Ember is super effective, it's only going to be an effective power of 80, whereas Body Slam is an effective power of 85, and it has the chance to paralyze. And with it, I'm able to take a victory against Erica. So now let's head to Sylph. After all, in here I can do some training as well as pick up key vitamins. At level 36, I did decide to face the rival. I wanted to see how this fight would go, just to test it out, but it's not going well. This is not going to happen at this level. I am definitely going to need to evolve into a Rapidash before I can win here. So I train up and do that as fast as possible. After all, as you can see on the right hand side of the screen, there isn't too much of a downside to doing this now. The only thing is now I obtained agility at level 55 instead of level 48. At level 41, I attempt to fight the rival again. Body Slam gets a critical hit, doing more than half, Sand Slash does a lot with Slash, and then I decide to use Ember. It doesn't KO the Sand Slash, but it does put it in potion range, and that allows me to knock it out on the next turn. Okay, time for the Cloyster. Now I do have Fire Spin, and I was hoping that I would be able to trap it, but I just miss on the first turn. Luckily, Cloyster uses Withdraw. I go for Fire Spin on the next turn. It's doing a little bit of damage, but it does mean that Cloyster can't move. And then the Fire Spin that I use on the next turn gets a critical hit, so now each one of its hits are going to be crits, and this takes the Cloyster down to low orange health. I miss my next Fire Spin. Cloyster misses its Clamp. Okay, that's good. And then I go for Ember, which finishes it off. Time for Magneton. Now this thing's a bit annoying because I don't have Dig. I knock it out over 2 turns with Body Slam. Kadabra's next. Obviously I outspeed, I really outspeed. I knock it out with Body Slam. Flareon's last. It misses a Sand Attack, and I take it out. Now remember with the other 2 playthroughs when I mentioned Giovanni and I was like, yeah, he's easy. Check out Rapidash. I just keep missing Fire Spin against the Rhyhorn, and it actually uses Tail Whip a lot, lowering my defense 3 times. As a result, when it hits with Horn Attack, it does so much damage, and then it uses Stomp, taking me to 2 hit points. Oh no, is this going to be a reset against Giovanni? I go for Body Slam on the Nidoqueen. It does half, paralyzes, and it doesn't move. And as a result, my next Body Slam finishes it off. So I just barely squeezed through there. Next, I head to Koga's gym. I felt like it just made sense to fight him, after all he only has bug types. Still, Rapidash is stuck with Ember, so I'm 2-shotting the Venonats. However, Venomoth has much higher special, so I decide to use Body Slam against it. I get the paralysis, Koga uses an X attack, I switch to using Ember, Venomoth uses Double Team, and then I knock it out with Body Slam. Okay, so I did it. With that, I make the trip across the ocean to Cinnabar Island, complete Pokemon Mansion, and then I go up against Blaine. The reason I want to defeat him now is for the special boost as well as for the Fire Blast TM. I really need an upgrade to Ember and Fire Spin. As seems to be thematic for this playthrough, I do manage to win, but just barely surviving on red health. Next is Sabrina, and for once I'm going to outspeed all 3 of her Pokemon. I don't finish the Kadabra off in a single hit. As a result, the Alakazam does survive, but it just uses useless moves, and I knock it out. Alright, Giovanni is next, and I have a little bit of experience playing for me here, because I know that I should teach Rapidash Fire Blast right away. I teach it in the place of Ember. After all, trapping Pokemon with Fire Spin could be useful as a last resort. And with Rapidash, I decide to take a different approach. I use Mimic to steal Earthquake from Dugtrio. After all, this is a physical move. I knock it out with Body Slam over the next 2 turns, and then I move on to the Persian. I finish it, having my defense lowered in the process, and now I really can't take a hit. I use Earthquake on the Nidoqueen, but it doesn't finish it off. Giovanni uses a Guard Spec, I knock it out the next turn and move on to the Nidoking. Now while it is a less defensive Pokemon, it is a higher level, so it still survives, uses Earthquake, and that finishes Rapidash off. In the next battle, we can see a downside to this approach, which is I get hit by the Dugtrio's Earthquake, taking me all the way down to orange hit points. As a result, I don't finish it off and it takes me out on the next turn. However, after I Mimic Earthquake, if I use it on the Dugtrio, I actually can knock it out in a single turn. I crit the Persian with Fire Blast, allowing me to take it out in a single hit, and now I'm level 50 for the Nidoqueen. I go for Earthquake, it doesn't knock it out, Giovanni uses a Guard Spec again, are you kidding me? And then I finish it off. Okay, time for the Nidoking. While I don't get the KO, Rapidash does survive, and I knock it out on the next turn, so I've made it to the Rhydon. If I get lucky here, I could win. I go for Earthquake, hoping for a crit. I don't get it, it survives with half health, and then finishes me off with Earthquake. So I tried Giovanni a couple more times and both ended in losses. So I decided to backtrack to the fighting dojo and do a little bit of additional training. Still at level 50, things aren't working out for Rapidash, so I'm going to try and change up my strategy here. I teach Rapidash Reflect in the place of Fire Spin. I mimic Earthquake on the first turn, knock the Dugtrio out, and then after hitting the Persian once, I set up Reflect, and this means that the Nidoqueen can't do nearly as much damage to me. Also, I can go for Body Slam against it and the Nidoking on first turn, just in case I get paralysis. This allows me to make it to the Rhydon. I do get a critical hit on it first turn. Giovanni uses a Guard Spec, and yeah, I guess that's how Rapidash is gonna win. Through the power of guard specs. The rival before the league is next. Here I mimic Slash, after all Rapidash is very fast. After that, I set up Reflect, and then I go to town, knocking out his lead. While I do take the Execute out, unfortunately the Cloyster finishes me off. In the next fight I tried using Slash against the Execute, which really wasn't a good idea because it paralyzes Rapidash, and as a result, Cloyster wins again. So I think I'm being too fancy here. Fire Blast the Sandslash, Fire Blast the Execute, Fire Blast the Cloyster, that's 3 1-hits. On the Magneton, I knock it out over 3 turns with Body Slam. After all, this thing is in a Steel type in Generation 1. Body Slam 1 hits the Kadabra, and then all that's left is the Flareon, but it isn't much of a threat. So I've made it to the start of the league, and now I'm going to use my rare candies. This way, Rapidash can learn Agility finally, and then I take it all the way up to level 60 before I face Lorelei. She leads with Dugong, and now I want to draw your attention over to the top left where we can see Rapidash's moveset. It's very similar to Arcanine's moveset when it was facing Lorelei. However, the fact that Arcanine's strategy against Agatha was to use Dig meant it didn't have the ability to learn Mimic, which Rapidash is going to be able to make great use of in this fight. My goal, of course, is to get to Slowbro, steal Amnesia, and then set up with it, improving the damage from Fire Blast and allowing me to sweep through her final Pokemon. Now, it's easy to criticize this strategy because setting up against the Slowbro, which is a water type, seems very risky. However, this is where I need to mention one of Lorelei's AI modifications. Her trainer class is one of a rare few that has AI modification 2, which means on the second turn every Pokemon is in battle, they are always going to use a move that boosts their stats. In combination with good AI, this means the Slowbro only has the choice between Surf and Withdraw on any given turn. And then on the second turn in battle, it is always going to choose Withdraw. So really what I'm looking to avoid here is a first turn Surf from the Slowbro. So because of the risk in this strategy, I did want to see if I could just knock the Slowbro out immediately with Body Slam. Unfortunately, because it is using Withdraw, my second Body Slam doesn't get the KO, but I still knock it out and move on to the Jinx. I one-hit it with Body Slam, and last is Lapras. I go for Fire Blast, get a critical hit, and it doesn't knock it out. So yeah, if I want to avoid the Hydro Pump, I am going to need to set up with Amnesia. In the very next fight, Cloyster beats me up with Clamp before I arrive at the Slowbro, mimic Amnesia, and then it goes for Surf right away. Okay, so that's not good. So because my health's so low and I have 4 turns of setup giving me badge boosts, I decided to try to go for Body Slam, but in this case it doesn't do enough and Slowbro knocks me out. Okay, I should be able to get this fairly soon, right? Well, after another reset, Dugong does so much damage to me, so I decide to mimic Rest to heal, but this doesn't work out, it just uses Bubble Beam, and yeah, Rapidash goes down again. However, in the next fight, I make it to the Slowbro, set up Amnesia fully, and then from there, I knock it out, move on to the Jinx, which I one-hit with Body Slam, and now all that's left is the Lapras. Okay, please say I have enough damage. But then in the critical moment, I get a critical hit, bypassing my special setup, and Lapras survives on a Sliver. Ugh. However, in Generation 1, setting up with Amnesia has a secondary effect because I'm also more specially defensive. As a result, Rapidash survives Hydro Pump, and I knock it out on the next turn. Luckily today, Rapidash doesn't struggle against Bruno, and I managed to make it through him on my first attempt, so only Arcanine will fail here today. Next is Agatha, and while it is unfortunate that I don't have access to Dig for this fight, I do have Mimic. I can use it to steal Substitute, and this is going to dramatically improve Rapidash's consistency. After all, a Substitute completely blocks confusion. You can't damage yourself if you're already confused when you set up the Substitute, and the opponents can also not confuse you. Additionally, if you get hit by Lick, the secondary effect for paralysis can't be applied, so really in this situation the only worry I have is being put to sleep by Hypnosis. However, I can take my time and set up on the first Gengar because it doesn't know Hypnosis. Only the Haunter and the second Gengar do. After that, with my stats boosted, I'm ready to sweep. I can use Fire Blast for the Ghosts, and Body Slam for the Golbat and the Arbok. I make it to the final Gengar, I go for Fire Blast, it hits, taking the Ghost to red, Agatha uses a Super Potion, and then on the next turn, I knock it out. So I've made it to Lance with Rapidash, and once again I do not have good news here. Gyarados is going to be awful. Luckily, I get a critical hit on the first turn, which does more than half. Gyarados uses Hydro Pump, and yeah, okay, that's really... Oh, it got a crit, okay. So yeah, Rapidash goes down. Let's try that again. I get another critical hit with Body Slam doing even more. This time it paralyzes Gyarados, and yeah, Gyarados gets another critical hit, knocking Rapidash out again. Okay, can I be lucky for a third time in the row? The answer is no, because Body Slam doesn't get paralysis, but also yes, because Hydro Pump misses. That's good. My next Body Slam takes Gyarados to red, and then I get paralysis. Okay, perfect. Gyarados can't move as a result, and so I knock it out. I'm proceeding to Lance's first Dragonair without taking any damage. I really couldn't have asked for a better situation. I go for Body Slam, it doesn't KO, but Dragonair just misses a Hyper Beam and I knock it out on the next turn. Now Rapidash has Mimic, so I can steal Ice Beam and then use it to sweep Lance's remaining Pokemon. It one-hits the second Dragonair, one-hits the Aerodactyl, and also one-hits the Dragonite. So now Rapidash has made it to the champion. With its current time, it has the potential to clock in faster than Ninetales, and that would make it in this preliminary round the strongest fire type. And let's be real, if it loses to Arcanine, I'm going to be very upset. This video is going to be extremely long. So let's see how it can do in its final fight of this first run. Sandslash is first, I go for Fire Blast, and it takes it out in a single hit. Okay, that means I'm not going to get hit by Earthquake. Alakazam is next, I outspeed, go for Body Slam, get a critical hit and knock it out. It's time for Executor now. This time I remember to use Fire Blast, and it knocks it out in a single hit. Okay, so far it's been a sweep, but Magneton is not going to go down to a single hit. I go for Fire Blast, it takes the electric type to orange, it strikes back with Screech, lowering my defense, and then I knock it out with Body Slam. Now Screech wasn't a good choice there because the champion's final two Pokemon are not physical attackers. Next is Cloyster, of course. I go for Fire Blast. The Shellfish just barely survives on red health. However, I get the burn, which is perfect because Clamp is a multi-turn move, so after it hits once, Burn does damage and Cloyster goes down. All that's left is his ace, the Flareon. I said his final two Pokemon were not physical attackers, and I guess the Flareon sort of is, but its only physical move is Quick Attack. It does a decent amount of damage, my Body Slam takes it under half, and then it doesn't use Quick Attack on the second turn, so I knock it out. And with that, Rapidash clocks in with a time of 1 hour, 19 minutes, and 53 seconds, with 24 resets at level 66. All of this took 4 hours and 27 minutes of game time. So here are all of our two-stage fire types results. I'm sure some of you at this moment are wondering, is Flareon going to make a surprise appearance because it is also a two-stage fire type? I don't really consider it a two-stage fire type because Eevee is a normal type and then Flareon is a fire type. Plus, I'm going to have to make a video with Jolteon and Vaporeon as well, so Flareon's already spoken for. The results from this first preliminary playthrough suggest that Rapidash is the best fire type, with Ninetales being just slightly behind it, and then Arcanine as a distant third place. I do want to mention here that we have to take these results with a grain of salt. After all, I'm just feeling the Pokemon out and learning how to use them. Plus with Arcanine, I do think it could have clocked in earlier if I had just blacked out, trained up say 5 to 10 levels, and then fought the Elite Four again. I also think there's another factor that's at play in these results, and that's the order in which I did these playthroughs. I did the Ninetales playthrough on March 31st, and then I did the Arcanine playthrough on April 4th. So yes, I did do Arcanine after Ninetales, which did not help its results. However, I did Rapidash on April 8th, so 4 days after Arcanine, and I definitely think that the experience from Arcanine shaped my Rapidash playthrough to some extent. While I don't believe this is relevant for the comparison between Rapidash and Arcanine, I think that can mostly be explained by the fact that I unlearned Fire Blast before the champion fight, in order to get rest to defeat Lance. However, I do think that play order largely influences why Rapidash was faster than Ninetales. I think that if I had played Ninetales last of the three, that it probably would have got the best results. Granted, I played Arcanine second, and I think if I played it last, it still probably would have got the worst results. Since it's primarily a physical attacker and it has Dig, I probably would have still made the mistake and unlearned Fire Blast when defeating Lance. But now it's time to get into some optimizations. But to do that, I really have to explain how my process has changed over the last 8 months. So when I originally filmed this video, the way that I would test is I would just go back into the old save files, reload them, and attempt the battles over and over again to see what my damage ranges were like and if I could invent a better strategy. I actually did this testing. I tested Ninetales, Rapidash, and Arcanine in this way to figure out what the best way was to beat each gym leader. And then what I did was I tried to put into practice all of the things that I had learned in subsequent playthroughs. And yeah, I did a lot of playthroughs, like too many playthroughs. Despite having optimized a lot, Growlithe evolving into Arcanine still really struggled at Misty. There wasn't really a good way to get by this fight, but that is not the most disappointing part of the playthrough. The most disappointing part of the playthrough is definitely Lance. So in my second playthrough with Arcanine, I actually got really lucky against him, got a critical hit against Gyarados, and as a result, I was able to sweep my way to a win. Now you can see here that my moveset is slightly different. Because I've brought Body Slam, Agility, Fire Blast, and Mimic into the fight, I can use Ice Beam strategies to take down his final 3 Pokemon and move on to the champion retaining Fire Blast. By doing this, I can now one-shot the Sandslash with Fire Blast, Body Slam the Alakazam out of existence, use Fire Blast on the Exeggutor, which doesn't KO, but I knock it out on the next turn. Then I Body Slam the Cloyster because I can't one-hit it with Fire Blast, so I'm basically rolling for paralysis just in case. In this case, it actually works out, and then I knock it out with Fire Blast. One sacrifice I had to make with this strategy was I let go of Dig. After all, it's not very useful against Lance, but I can just use Body Slam as a more versatile substitute for it that's a little bit less powerful. It knocks the Ninetales out, last is Jolteon. It does hit a Thunder here, but Arcanine survives it, and I knock it out on the next turn. So, in its second playthrough, Arcanine clocks in with a time of 1 hour, 18 minutes, and 56 seconds, with 20 resets at level 64. This took 4 hours and 35 minutes of game time. Now, it's worth noting that this playthrough was done on May 4th, and the reason it took me a month between the first playthrough and the second playthrough was I was just so unsatisfied with the results I was getting when testing. Eventually, I had to just say, I guess this Pokemon is inconsistent, and try another playthrough, and yeah, it was very inconsistent. Still a lot of resets. Thinking that I could optimize things further and really shave a lot of time off by reducing the number of resets, I went into the playthrough again, decided to train more, and the end result was this. I get to Lance with only 7 resets at 1 hour and 13 minutes on the clock. But this time I've changed up my final moveset. Now I'm going to use Fire Blast to knock the Gyarados out. After all, Body Slam and Fire Blast are both supposed to be 3 hits. In this case, I just get 2 critical hits and a burn, which speeds things up. As a result, I'm able to take Dig into the final battle against the champion. However, in this case, the game really just hates me, because I almost KO the Exeggutor with Fire Blast, it causes a burn, and then Exeggutor uses Hypnosis, putting Arcanine to sleep, right before it faints to burn damage and Cloyster comes out. So yeah, I cannot believe that happened. Also, Cloyster misses Clamp twice. Arcanine wakes up and it's like, hey, there might be hope. But then Cloyster hits with Clamp, and yeah, it hits 3 times, doing more than half. Then it outspeeds, and yeah, this is it. Arcanine goes down. Granted, this sort of pain is not supposed to happen. In the next fight, it doesn't play out that way, and I just barely make it through the Cloyster. However, at that point, with Dig, I can one-shot the Ninetales and one-shot the Jolteon. So in my third attempt with it, Arcanine clocks in with a time of 1 hour, 15 minutes, and 29 seconds. This is with 8 resets and at level 64. Now at this point, we have to switch back to Ninetales, because I need to get real about something, because I was trying so hard and obsessing over Arcanine because of how Ninetales' second playthrough went. It made it to Lance with a time under 1 hour and 3 minutes. I got lucky on Gyarados, finished it off, polished Lance off, and moved on to the champion. And yeah, I don't really know what to say here, I can't really hype this fight up. Ninetales is really good. It actually just swept the champion and beat him on its first attempt. And that allows it to clock in with a time of 1 hour, 4 minutes, and 14 seconds, with 10 resets at level 66, with a game time of 3 hours and 56 minutes. So these results from Ninetales are significantly better than my 2 follow-up playthroughs with Arcanine. I thought to myself at this point, perhaps Ninetales just got lucky. Because I didn't want to do a 4th Arcanine playthrough just yet, I was like, well, maybe if I play Ninetales again, it will get less lucky, and its time will be more comparable. After all, these fire types really have to squeeze by Lance's Gyarados. And yeah, then I arrived at the champion at 59 minutes with 0 resets. And like I said last time, Ninetales just doesn't struggle against the champion. It just has everything it needs to completely destroy his team. And yeah, Ninetales on its 3rd playthrough clocks in with a sub-hour time. This is when it was evolving from Vulpix. So it has a time of 59 minutes, 41 seconds, with 0 resets at level 68. So it even squeezed out more levels, and it was able to clock in with a sub-hour time. This is more than 15 minutes faster than Arcanine's best time. So at this point, my stubbornness activated, and I was like, I am gonna get Arcanine's time at least under 1 hour and 10 minutes. I did a 4th playthrough, it got a result of 1 hour, 12 minutes, and 13 seconds. And in this case, it got 8 resets, so it's not improving its consistency very much. I tried again doing a 5th playthrough and got 1 hour, 12 minutes, and 7 seconds with 12 resets, so I was very frustrated by this because I'm like, alright, it got a better time, even though it had 4 more resets, but I just can't get this thing under 1 hour and 10 minutes. And so then on May 10th, I did a 6th playthrough, and I said to myself that this was going to be my final Arcanine playthrough, no matter what happened, because I just can't spend like 8+ hours playing one Pokemon for one video. Like, I really wish I could sometimes, especially in a situation like this, but yeah, it's ordinarily not realistic. And then in this playthrough, I arrived at Lance with 12 resets, so a lot of resets, but I got here at 1 hour and 6 minutes. So there is the potential for this playthrough to clock in under 1 hour and 10 minutes. But I am going to have to get lucky against Lance's Gyarados. After all, to cut time from this playthrough, you'll notice that my Arcanine is at a lower level. I get a critical hit on the first turn, which does more than half to Gyarados. It goes for Hydro Pump, and it gets a crit too. Oh no. Okay, let's not give up yet. That was a fast loss. In the next fight, Body Slam paralyzes right away, preventing Gyarados from moving. That's perfect. However, on the second turn, it hits with Hydro Pump, and it does so much, taking Arcanine down to red health. That's the sacrifice that I made with getting less levels. So I do make it onto the Dragonair. I have to go for Dig here. It does just more than half, and then Dragonair strikes back with Hyper Beam, and it takes Arcanine down. Okay, so things are really not looking good. However, then in the very next fight, I get the luck I need. Gyarados misses Hydro Pump twice in a row and I knock it out with full health. Then I paralyze the Dragonair, it doesn't do any damage to me and I knock it out, moving on to the second Dragonair. Here I mimic Ice Beam, and with that, I'm able to sweep through Lance's remaining Pokemon and move on to the champion at a time of 1 hour, 7 minutes, and 39 seconds. Okay, so to clock in under 1 hour and 10 minutes, I'm going to need a first attempt victory here. And unfortunately for me, Fire Blast is not a guaranteed one-hit against the Sandslash anymore. It survives, however, I did burn it, causing it to deal very little damage to me, and then I knock it out on the next turn. Alakazam is an easy one-hit with Body Slam, and next is Exeggutor. Now obviously dropping my level is a consistency cut, but there's another concession here that I have to make, and that's to mimic Hypnosis against the Exeggutor. I put it to sleep, and then I knock it out. After that, it's time for Cloyster, and this is where Hypnosis needs to work. But it misses, Cloyster hits Clamp, and it takes Arcanine all the way down to red health. Okay, Hypnosis, this is the moment. You need to work. And it does. I put Cloyster to sleep, knock it out with 2 Fire Blasts, and with that, I'm able to move on to the Ninetales. Here, I can use Rest to ensure that I win, and after that, I knock out the champion's remaining 2 Pokemon, and Arcanine clocks in with a time of 1 hour, 9 minutes, and 1 second. This playthrough had 14 resets, I finished the game at level 58, and this was a game time of 4 hours and 8 minutes. So that's the best result I was able to get with Growlithe evolving into Arcanine. But still, it is not even close to Vulpix evolving into Ninetales. After all, about 10 minutes still separates these 2 playthroughs. If this video was in fact just Arcanine vs Ninetales, I think at this point we could conclude that Ninetales is the better 2-stage fire type. However, it was always my intent to sneak Rapidash into this video, and that's where things really fell apart for the production of this video. I filmed this final playthrough for Arcanine on May 10th. After that, for fairness, on May 12th and May 13th, I did additional Ninetales playthroughs, so it had done a total of 6 playthroughs as well. I was able to optimize things in the mid to late game a little bit better, which means it was able to clock in with a similar time to its previous playthroughs, however, it did have more resets. However, then after all of this, I started investigating Rapidash more in depth. My intent was to play 5 more playthroughs with it to get accurate times to see how all of these Pokemon compare. However, in this case, destiny or fate was determined to take me on a different path. Because J-Rose released a Hypno video, and I was like, that seems like fun, I should try a Hypno playthrough. And I just did one for fun because, believe me, these fire types were not very fun. Inconsistencies everywhere, So I was like, yeah, let's do Hypno, this seems fun. And then literally the day after I had done a Hypno playthrough, a patron reached out and asked me to do a Poliwrath playthrough. Specifically in his request was the fact that I should start with Poliwrath and not evolve it throughout the playthrough. I made the case that it would be faster if I evolved it throughout the playthrough because it would have access to Amnesia, but he really wanted to see Poliwrath by itself. And since for fun I had just played Hypno starting it fully evolved, I was like, why not pair those 2 together and make a video out of it? And if you remember that video, I got so much feedback about how awful my Hypnosis play was that I actually went back and added a section to the video. And the production of that video took about a week and a half, and it also required me to play 10 full playthroughs. As a result, I did not want to come back and work on Rapidash. So then for about the next month, I procrastinated on Arcanine vs Ninetales, all the while in comments responding to all your requests about where it was, because of course I mentioned it at the beginning of my Hypno vs Poliwrath video. Why did I do that? Anyways, I had mentioned it a bunch. I was like, yeah, it's coming. Don't worry, I'm working on it. Like, the majority of the video is already filmed. It's pretty much done. But unfortunately, the process of producing Hypno vs Poliwrath had also taught me a lesson about these versus videos. The lesson was that I should be starting these playthroughs with the fully evolved Pokemon. If I evolve throughout the playthrough, then I actually take away a fun experience for myself, which is having a blind attempt of playing the game with the unevolved Pokemon. For instance, now when I do Growlithe, Vulpix, and Ponyta playthroughs, I will already have the first portion of the game spoiled for me. And that didn't really seem like fun, plus it's really hard to compare an Arcanine result if it started as a Growlithe and evolved into an Arcanine with, say, a Poliwrath, which just started as a Poliwrath. How do you rank those two things together in the same tier list? And so I had to make the really tough decision to start the production of this video all over again and start with fully evolved Pokemon. After all, this felt like the only fair way to finally compare these results with all of the other playthroughs that I've done to this point on my channel. I dragged my feet on this for so long that I actually implemented an overlay update, and now we are here at the present day, starting another Arcanine playthrough. First of all, I just have to say thanks to Serena Vale for all of the awesome art that she contributed to these new overlays. Thank you so much for bringing these Pokemon to life. We all really appreciate it. If you want to check out her stuff or commission her for some of your own art, check out my link to her Twitter in the description. So there's two things that I need to explain before we go into these final playthroughs. First of all, I did 3 more playthroughs with both Arcanine and Ninetales, and then 1 more playthrough with Rapidash. So for this video, I actually did a total of 10 playthroughs with Arcanine, 9 playthroughs with Ninetales, and 3 playthroughs with Rapidash. So this video is the culmination of 22 playthroughs of work. I love this game so much, by the way, so I'm actually kind of happy about it, despite how painful these Pokemon were to play with. The second thing that I need to mention is how their move pools compare now. After all, we're starting fully evolved, so Ninetales and Arcanine won't learn any new moves through level up. Arcanine starts with Roar, Ember, Leer, and Takedown. Honestly, I would switch out any of these moves to have access to Bite like Growlithe has, because Takedown is going to be very annoying because it deals recoil damage. For Ninetales, it starts with Ember, Tail Whip, Quick Attack, and Roar. Honestly, a much better starting set, especially when this thing has such incredible special. Now, the first thing that needed to be figured out in all of these playthroughs was what level did I want to take Brock on at? Well, for Ninetales, it's going to be able to consistently get by him at level 10. At this level, I can 4-shot the Geodude and also 4-shot the Onix. I have enough speed to always move first, so Bind and Bide are not an issue. And really, the only way this can go wrong is if Brock gets some critical hits or lowers my defense enough with Screech and then gets a massive hit. Ninetales clocks in this first split with a time of 3 minutes and 54 seconds. For Arcanine, it can also take Brock on at level 10, however, it is a little bit less consistent because its damage ranges with Ember are just not as good. Also, getting to level 10 takes longer because it's a slow growth rate Pokemon, so Arcanine clocks in with a time of 4 minutes and 21 seconds. So it's roughly 45 seconds behind Ninetales at the start. While Rapidash is actually a medium slow growth rate Pokemon, it makes more sense to face Brock at level 11, just because this thing has lower HP and defense than Arcanine. As a result, even with a faster growth rate, Rapidash clocks in with a time of 4 minutes and 21 seconds on this split. It's 8 seconds ahead of Arcanine, but still behind Ninetales. Obviously, with all of these Pokemon, I head to Nugget Bridge first, then I go to the SSN, picking up Body Slam, and then I head back to Misty after all of this. With Rapidash, it arrives here at level 25. Body Slam is going to be a guaranteed one-hit on the Staryu, but I actually get a Gen 1 miss on the first turn. Like, are you kidding? So unlucky. Anyways, next turn I hit with Body Slam and I knock it out. Then Starmie's next. Then, because I'm really fast, I have nice speed after all. I move first against the Starmie, hitting Body Slam. It does more than half. I actually paralyze the Starfish in this case, and then I knock it out on the next turn. Next, I take on Surge, and while Rapidash doesn't get access to Dig, in the end this doesn't actually matter against Surge, because he can't do very much to me. This fight here is actually one of the worst case scenarios. Raichu hits Thunderbolt, it paralyzes Rapidash, it moves first on the next turn, hitting a Mega Punch, taking me to 21 hit points, and then I just knock it out with my second Body Slam. Now when Rapidash starts fully evolved, it actually has a better option available to it against the self-destructing Hiker. If I spam Growl against all of his Geodudes, when they finally use self-destruct, they'll do very little damage to Rapidash. By doing this, I'm able to make it by him on my first attempt, and so Rapidash is going into the Celadon portion of the game with no resets. Now while I fight Erica, who is obviously very easy, she's not going to use Sleep Powder because it's a grass type move, I just want to recap what I did in this section of the game. I did the Hideout to grab the extra rare candy, after all these fire types really need it. After that I went to the Safari Zone, and then I headed to Erica's gym where I fought all the trainers. And after her, Rapidash is level 35 with a time of 28 minutes and 43 seconds. For Arcanine, because of its slow growth rate, it arrives at Misty 2 levels lower than Rapidash. However, its great attack stat means that Body Slam still one-hits the Staryu. It actually does more damage to the Starmie in this case. I tank a Bubble Beam and then I knock it out. Surge is completely a joke because I have Dig, and this move continues to be helpful throughout Rock Tunnel. With Arcanine, I actually did a different ordering of events. I took Erica on before I went to Pokemon Tower, and this means that its split is significantly faster than Rapidash's, but these times aren't very comparable. However, of all three Pokemon, Ninetales is the one that has the most to worry about at Misty. After all, it has a lower attack stat than the other ones. But still, Dig here allows me to one-shot the Staryu. I go for Dig against the Starmie, it does more than half, I get hit by a Bubble Beam, which I tank pretty well because I have a good special stat, and then I knock the Starmie out on the next turn. So still no resets for any of them. Obviously with that, Surge is easy, and then I make it to Erica and defeat her, and Ninetales clocks in with a time of 22 minutes and 13 seconds. Granted, it also hasn't faced the Pokemon Tower rival, but after the first 4 gyms, Ninetales has very clearly taken a lead. Now Koga is the first fight where all of these Pokemon have some level of inconsistency. I have to defeat him to get Fire Blast, which would really make him much easier, and I don't want to fight the rival in Sylph before I have that move either because I need it to contend with his Cloyster. As a result, with all of these Pokemon, I'm stuck defeating him with Body Slam, Dig, and Ember. For Ninetales, Ember obviously has the best damage ranges here. I can take out all the Venonats in 2 hits, and then in the Venomoth's case, I get a 3 hit because I also got a critical hit. After that I fight Blaine to get the special boost. It's a little bit inconsistent for Ninetales just because Dig isn't great against his team, but I need to defeat him so I can face the rival in Sylph next. With the boost that his badge gave, I'm able to use Fire Blast to consistently one-shot both the Sandslash and the Cloyster. After that, the rest of his team is not particularly challenging. I use Dig on the Magneton, Body Slam on the Kadabra, and finally Dig on the Flareon. Sabrina's really not that challenging because Ninetales has powerful physical moves, and it also has a great special stat, so it's not going to take a lot of damage. And that leads me to Giovanni. And I should mention here that squeezing through this fight at level 45 is by definition slightly inconsistent. However, I can use Fire Blast to one-shot the Dugtrio and move on to the Persian, where then I can mimic Double Team and set this up so that his team of powerful ground types can't hit Ninetales. As a result, in this playthrough, I take a victory on my first attempt. Last before the league is the rival. This fight ends up playing out the worst possible way for Ninetales because I get hit a lot because Fire Blast just doesn't want to hit. However, when it finally does hit, this fight is much easier. And with him out of the way, Ninetales is off to the league with a time of 38 minutes and 24 seconds. So this thing is definitely going to get a sub-hour time again, but it's probably actually going to get a sub-50-minute time now. Koga is also inconsistent for Arcanine, and because of my slow growth rate, I really need to use rare candies before this fight. Even with them, Arcanine just barely squeezes through without a reset. Next, I take on Blaine. This is a little bit more consistent with Arcanine than it is with Ninetales just because of how much damage Dig can do. The rival in Sylph is next, and while Arcanine has slightly worse damage ranges here with Fire Blast, I have leveled it up with rare candies, so it's able to get through this fight consistently as well. I stomp Sabrina because at this point Arcanine is outspeeding all of her Pokemon, and with that I've made it to Giovanni. Because of the rare candies and some extra training that I do in Viridian City Gym, Arcanine is level 50 when it starts the fight. I'm also going to employ the same strategy here, which is mimicking Double Team. For basically most fire and electric types, I think this is the best strategy against him. It's actually one of the reasons I didn't just outright ban evasion tactics, because believe me, fire and electric types would be just awful if you couldn't use this move here. Like, after playing this video, I might even say that fire type is worse than poison type if you don't have access to Double Team. With it, I'm able to sweep Giovanni's team and move on to the rival. The only inconsistency in this fight is the inherent inconsistency in using Fire Blast. Today it hits every time I need it to, and Arcanine is off towards the league at a time of 45 minutes and 47 seconds. So the delays that the Fire Doggo has experienced to this point are exclusively because its training takes longer than a Pokemon like Ninetales. Also with a lower special stat, it required rare candies earlier on. Unfortunately, out of the 3, Rapidash gets the least lucky at Koga, and it loses not once, but twice. Finally in the 3rd fight, it gets the luck it needs and finishes off the Poison-type Master. I wish from there it was smooth sailing, but Blaine is also harder for Rapidash than for the other Pokemon, and that's because it lacks Dig. As a result, it loses once here in this fight. Now you're probably thinking, this doesn't seem particularly optimized, Scott. There's all these potentials for losses in all these fights. Well, yes, there are, but these fire types are not very good. So I had to do something. Either I was going to overlevel, and I checked those damage ranges, and these Pokemon need to be like 15 levels higher. Like later on for Lance, Rapidash basically needs level 70 to get through that fight consistently. I really felt that investing in this much overleveling would just secure worse times overall for these Pokemon than trying to squeeze through in slightly inconsistent ways. And I have to say, this is largely why this video took so long for me to release, because I was very unsatisfied with having to go this route. It's also the case that these three Pokemon seem like they should be really good. They're intimidating fire types with great stats. But Rapidash and Arcanine are really underperforming expectations. Now for Rapidash on Giovanni, I'll admit I probably should have gone with Mimic strategies here. However, I decided to play around with this Reflect Agility moveset. After all, with setup, I can basically almost one-hit the Rhydon, but not quite. It's very frustrating that I don't knock it out. As a result, I end up losing 2 fights here when I really shouldn't have with Double Team, so I'll take that into consideration when we consider Rapidash's final time. Now, while I fight the rival before the league, I really want to say that Arcanine and Rapidash feel basically like the same Pokemon. Most of the fights you need to play out in the same way, whereas Ninetales feels kind of off in its own world. Just the fact that it has so much speed and so much special really makes it outclass as a fire type, because if you didn't know, in Generation 1, all fire type moves are special moves. Now in the league, something slightly counterintuitive ends up playing out, and that's the fact that Rapidash is actually better than Arcanine because it doesn't have Dig. I know I'm gonna need to explain that, but basically because it isn't seduced into using Dig throughout the rest of the playthrough for better damage ranges, it has 4 move slots available. So, you can start the league with the moveset Body Slam, Mimic, Fire Blast, and Rest. As a result, in the Lorelei fight, when I set up Amnesia against the Slowbro, I can just use Rest to heal. After all, now it can't do anything to me with Surf, and then I can consistently knock out her final 2 Pokemon. Obviously, the lack of Dig on Agatha is not great. However, I do have Mimic for this fight, so I can set up Substitute and then use Fire Blast to defeat all of her Pokemon. To ensure I have enough PP for this fight, I used all my PP ups on Fire Blast, and I'm able to defeat her without a reset. For Arcanine, it's going to require a little bit more luck for Lorelei, especially if I want to keep Dig for Agatha. In this case, that leads to 1 reset before I'm finally able to get set up with Amnesia and then knock out her Pokemon. However, this does completely trivialize Agatha. Like, I don't think there's a chance that Arcanine loses this fight. For Ninetales, it stacks up against Lorelei the worst. It has Fire Blast, Dig, Body Slam, and Mimic. Now, you might think observing this fight that it would make sense to use Rest in the place of Body Slam, but it doesn't work that way because I need Body Slam for Lance's Gyarados. As a result, mirroring Arcanine, Ninetales takes its first reset here against Lorelei as well. But this once again secures an easy victory over Agatha with Dig. So now all 3 Pokemon have made it to Lance, and for this fight specifically, everything can go wrong for these 3. If you wondered why earlier I said I did 10 playthroughs total with Arcanine and 9 with Ninetales, the reason being is that I had to do playthroughs until the luck lined up against Lance and the Pokemon got by with, let's say, like 3 or less resets. For Ninetales with its damage ranges, it's going to knock the Gyarados out with 3 hits from Body Slam at level 58. It doesn't make any sense to level up to say 60, 63, or 65 because it's not going to give 2 hits for Ninetales, and all the training would just bloat the playtime far too much. So once again, this is a consistency concession that I had to make in favor of getting a decent time. Because of it, Ninetales resets twice before I finally defeat him. For Arcanine, I actually play this fight slightly differently. With Ninetales, I was using Mimic to steal Ice Beam and then sweeping, but in this case, I'm going to use Rest in the place of Mimic. My Arcanine gets lucky with a critical hit right away against the Gyarados, and as a result, I'm able to take it down over 2 turns. Normally, this should be a 3-hit. Essentially, there's a bunch of factors that come together to make Body Slam the best move there. After all, these Pokemon have a chance to crit that nears 20%, Body Slam has a 30% chance to paralyze, and Hydro Pump has a 20% chance to miss. So all of those factors together means that I'm able to get by the Gyarados with decent regularity. Like, I don't like it. It's worse than using Hypnosis. I'm sure all of you are just gonna really hate it in the comments. But believe me, I thought about these playthroughs for like 8 months. This is the best way to do it. Granted, Rapidash does have a trick up its sleeve that it could use, but yeah, we'll see that when I get to it. Now, unfortunately for Arcanine, it's gonna need a way to take out the Aerodactyl and the Dragonite, and so I have a really weird strategy here, which is the second Dragonair is going to always spam Bubble Beam because it knows water moves are super effective against my fire type. Bubble Beam in Generation 1 has a 33% chance to lower your speed, and in Generation 1, when the opponent reduces one of your stats, it triggers the badge boost, which will increase Arcanine's attack stat. So the plan that I have here is to get hit by Bubble Beam over and over, spam Rest, until it boosts my attacking stats enough that I can one-shot Lance's following 2 Pokemon. It takes a little while to get set up. After all, Bubble Beam really didn't want to drop my speed. And then next, I move on to the Aerodactyl. Obviously it's fast, my speed's been dropped a lot, so it moves first. It hits a critical hit Hyper Beam, are you kidding me? So that is what I would call a very frustrating reset. Whenever you're utilizing a strategy that requires to be set up, there's always some inconsistency because the opponent could crit while you're trying to set up. Also, then these strategies lose a lot of time because it took you all that time to get set up. However, in the next fight, I'm able to get set up, knock the Aerodactyl out with 2 hits, and then knock the Dragonite out with 2 hits as well. So Arcanine has made it to the champion. And yeah, like I said before, with Fire Blast in this fight, and Dig, it's not very hard. I can rest up on the Executor, and then sweep through the rest of his team. So Arcanine, when it starts as an Arcanine, clocks in with a time of 56 minutes even, with 2 resets at level 64, and this took 3 hours and 36 minutes of game time. So what about Rapidash against Lance? Well, its moveset has remained unchanged throughout the league. It's still going to 3-hit the Gyarados if it doesn't get a critical hit. In this case, I do get a crit, and that allows me to move on to the first Dragonair. I 2-shot it, and then on the second one, I can use Mimic to steal Ice Beam. However, first, before I do that, I rest up. After that, with an Ice move on my side, I sweep and take the victory. Now, if you look at Rapidash's time, it is like 30 seconds behind Arcanine as I'm going through this champion fight. I was so convinced that it was going to clock in slower. After all, it has to take the Magneton out in 2 turns because it doesn't have Dig. The Flareon also takes longer. But when I finally defeat it, I could not believe its time. Rapidash clocks in with a time of 55 minutes and 59 seconds, with 5 resets at level 66. This took 3 hours and 31 minutes of game time. So Rapidash beat Arcanine by 1 second. But what about Ninetales? And here's the thing. Special is really good in Generation 1. It sweeps through the champion's team and clocks in with an outrageously good time. 46 minutes and 56 seconds, with 3 resets at level 60. This took 3 hours and 1 minute of game time. So let's compare these final results. Ninetales is roughly 9 minutes faster than both Arcanine and Rapidash. So obviously it is the winner of today's video. But who gets second place? Because I actually think that that's a hard question to ask. Because of my lack of discipline and the fact that I didn't do Rapidash playthroughs in close proximity with the Arcanine playthroughs that I did previously, I don't have as many results with Rapidash to compare. Overall, the Pokemon are so incredibly similar in the roles that they fill. Arcanine is definitely stronger in the earlier to mid portions of the game when it has access to Dig. However, it really drops off at the end of the game because of its slow growth rate. Rapidash, on the other hand, lacks Dig, but it has the medium-fast growth rate, and this lets it get by with a lot less training in the mid-game. However, I record multiple metrics so that I can break ties like this, and I think that the most telling statistic here is the fact that Rapidash was able to be slightly faster by 1 second, even when it had the resets against Koga, Blaine, and remember the resets against Giovanni, where I really should have been using Double Team. So, as a result, today I'm giving Rapidash second place. Still, Arcanine comes in a close third place. Now, how do these results translate to tier list placement? Well, both Arcanine and Rapidash were slightly faster than Hitmonlee, but a little bit slower than Poliwag and Bellsprout. I think this is so perfect. I love that the fully evolved fire types are just behind the unevolved grass and water types. Honestly, and it feels this way because Bellsprout and Poliwag were a joy to play, but Arcanine, Rapidash, and Hitmonlee were all very inconsistent and did not feel particularly strong. So as a result, today, Arcanine and Rapidash earned themselves spots near the end of the A tier. But where does Ninetales fit in? Well, the Fiery Fairy Fox, despite its typing, earned itself a time that is slightly faster than Hypno. As a result, today it earns itself a placement in the middle of the S tier. Now I just want to mention here that I'm ranking Pokemon based on the best result they've produced so far with the real-time metric. If there's the case where 2 Pokemon are close, I'll tie-break with the other metrics, but this is heavily favoring the real-time metric. After all, for many reasons, it is the best metric to rank Pokemon based on. However, I do think it's worth mentioning that a lot of player error can creep into the results of real-time specifically. However, there is a metric that compensates for this, which is game time. And Ninetales had 3 hours and 1 minute of game time, whereas Hypno had 3 hours and 3 minutes of game time. So today I'm comfortable with this ranking. However, in the future, I'm sure we're going to have to do some tiebreaker matches, and it seems like Ninetales vs Hypno might be one of those. Thank you so much for sitting through this behemoth of a video. If you made it this far, you are incredible. Like, subscribe, ring the chime echo, and comment because I gotta read them all. If you support me on Patreon or through YouTube memberships, thank you for making this content possible. Also, a big thanks to Manscaped for sponsoring this content. And now I'm going to announce my plans for December, which starts tomorrow. There will be a video almost every single day. Originally, I planned it to be every single day, but unfortunately I got sick and this has delayed some of my plans. This is just my way of saying thanks for the support over the last 2 years. Believe me, this is a dream job, so thank you all so much for making it a reality. It really does mean the world to me. So, I'll see you in my next video tomorrow.